Jay Crawford, Adam the Bull, Garrett Bush, Tyvis Powell, Jason Lloyd. Plus, ba-da-da-da-da, you're loving him, Mikey McNuggets. And so many big names, it would take me hours to say all of their names. The ultimate Cleveland sports show starts now. Booyah!
Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Along with Jason Lloyd, Tyvis Powell, I'm Adam the Bull. We've got Mike, we've got Steve, we've got Earl, and Anthony all behind the glass. And we have breaking news this, Thursday morning. JB Bickerstaff has been fired. We're going to talk about that for at least the first half hour, 40 minutes of the show. We've been waiting for it for a week. Woj broke the news today. JB Bickerstaff, he's gone. Who will replace him? Why is he gone? Was it the right move? We'll talk about it all coming up. Mike, start us off.
Yeah, we're going to dive right into things, and we start, as always, with the read from FanDuel. It is winner-take-all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/UCSS and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Bill, you mentioned it a second ago.
Yeah.
JB Bickerstaff is out. He had a winning record in Cleveland. We'll talk about potential candidates and replacements in a little bit, but I want to start with this question, and Ball, I'll start with you. Was this the right move, or just the move the Cavs had to make?
Well, I don't know. I don't know that they had to make it, but I do think it was the right move. Even though you could obviously argue that JB has made progress every year, but I think it's misleading in a way because a big part of the reason he made progress every year is because they acquired one of the 20 best players in the league. And I think in the end, guys, yes, they made progress every year. I don't think they made enough progress, in my opinion. And I don't care about the wins in the regular season. You know, the Cavs can tout their regular season wins all they want. To me, that is meaningless. All that matters is what you do in the playoffs. And they've won one series with Donovan Mitchell. And you could say, well, you know, they were terrible before he got here. They wouldn't have won. I don't care. In the end, you've had a guy who was at least borderline discussion for MVP before he got hurt this year. And it's not good enough to just be competitive. To me, you had to make more progress than you did. Now, there's something to be said for consistency within an organization, something we've never really seen with the Cavs. And so maybe JB with more time would have had more success. But it felt like quite often that he really didn't have a good plan. There was no creativity in the offensive game. It was all about, you know, pick and roll and let's see what happens. And I think in the end that did him in. That I guess I feel like with almost any coach, they would have made the same amount of progress. But with a good coach, they would have made more.
I would say that, first of all, I thought what John Blair did here as the head coach from 2020 to where he's at now was good. I thought that building a foundation, helping these young guys understand, you know, defense, helping them win games, helping them have successful seasons, getting them from a play-in team, getting them from a team that didn't make the playoffs to the play-in, to the first round, to the second round. I thought all of that was great, but I just always thought that when it came to playoff basketball, we often always say, we go by the thing, who's the top 10 players from either team? And we have a couple of Cavs in there. But the biggest mismatch always to me was when it came to the coaching. You know, I thought this year was the biggest one. Last year against Tom Thibodeau, Tom was the better coach. In the play-in series, when they lost to Atlanta, he got out-coached that one. And then they lost to, who was the other team they lost to? Was it the Nets?
Oh, the second play-in game?
Yeah.
I can't remember that.
I felt like he got out-coached in both of those two games. And then this year, They lost the last game to get the favorable matchup to go up against the Magic, and he still looked like he got out-coached a couple of times in that one, and he was the more experienced coach in that series, where the first time I thought he had the coaching advantage, and it went 7 games, and it looked bad at times. I thought that the reason the Cavs made this move is because right now they're a good team, but they want to be great. And I'm not saying that JB can't be a great coach, but you can't sit there and watch these things happen and say to yourself, yes, you made progress every year, but you got to ask yourself, can this guy win me a championship? That's the question that we always ask. Can I win a championship with this coach? And at the end of the day, he's been getting out-coached a few times, especially in the playoffs. I don't think the answer is yes. Now, I think that one day if he gets under a Popovich, a Spoelstra, and learn from somebody like that, I think he can become that guy. But right now, where they are right now in this time period, I think that they felt the best decision was I need to get a guy in there that I feel like can win the championship. And JB just isn't that right now at this particular time. So I think it's the right move, and I think it's the move that they had to make. I say yes to both.
Jason.
If you want to make a case to keep JB Bickerstaff, you can make that case. You can look at the progress that they've made every single year. You can look at the fact that this is a good coach in the NBA, and he is a good coach in a league that is thin on good coaches, frankly. He's one of the good ones. And they have an identity of we're going to play gritty defense, we're going to win defensively, play in first round, second round. He's a good man who isn't trying to undermine an organization, which so many of these guys do, and he's not in a power struggle looking to usurp power from different people and go behind the front office's back. That's not his MO at all, and there are a lot of coaches who do that, and that counts for a lot in the NBA. If you want to make a case to get rid of JB, you can make that case. Evan Mobley hasn't progressed the way that people expected him to. Darius Garland seems to have regressed the last year or so.
Yep.
The offense isn't good enough in the postseason. It hasn't been to this point. They just don't score enough. They've had fades in the second half. You can make whatever case you want to make, you can make that case. You're going to hear a lot of stuff over the next 24, 48 hours about why this happened. Only thing I'll tell you is if the players wanted him back, he would have been back. I believe, I just put a column out on this. Right. I believe he lost the locker room. And when you lose the locker room, it puts the front office in a position. I just wrote in a column that just posted, I don't believe Kobe Altman wanted to fire JB. I feel like Kobe Altman felt like he had no choice. Now, did he have a choice? Sure, he had a choice. We talked about it. We talked about it on the show Tuesday, Tyvis, where I told you he could come out there and say, you guys shut up and knock it off. We're not making any moves. This is a good team. We've gotten better every year. Go play for your coach.
And I told you what would happen.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying,
you can get away with that in football and baseball, but not in basketball.
That's a power move that he could have done, but there's risk for that.
Yeah,
for sure, there's risk in that, and so they went this way. And no matter what else you hear over the next couple of days, I absolutely believe, I've been told numerous times, multiple times over, that basically he lost the locker room, and that includes Donovan Mitchell. Like Donovan can run from that all he wants, and we talked about it before, Tyvis. No player wants that on him.
No.
But if Donovan wanted JB back, do you think JB would be back?
100%.
Yes.
100%.
I mean, at the end of the day, if Kobe had to at least have a conversation with Donovan about it, what do you want to do?
He wouldn't even need to. He would know.
You don't have to have you're there every single day. You're in that room every single day with them. You know the temperature without sitting him down at gunpoint and making him say, what do you want? No GM is going to do that to his star player.
Yeah.
But and there's nuance to it. There's gray matter. There's nonverbal, whatever, however you want to describe it. There's a lot of that going on. But where they stand without having to sit him down at the table and directly ask him, what do you want?
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think the decision to lose the last game made them, because Earl and McNuggets talk about all the time how Max Strus was just pissed about losing that last game. Do you think at that point Max Strus probably was like, you know what, I'm done with him?
Well, that is not a coaching decision. That's not JB looking up at the scoreboard and going, well, come on, get off the floor. That is an organizational decision. Every coach wants to win every game he's coaching. Even when the Cavs were terrible and tanking, and intentionally trying to lose, and they were intentionally trying to lose from 2010 to 2014. They were trying to lose as many games as they could. But Byron Scott, as the head coach for those couple of years, was still trying to win as many games as he could. Like, when you're the coach, you're not out there trying to lose a game. You're trying to win. So that is not a JB decision. That was an organizational decision. And yeah, some players were rubbed the wrong way by it, sure. And I do think that they felt as an organization, now they're going to deny that they tanked or whatever, and it doesn't matter. The fact is, they needed a first-round win, and they got it. And it wasn't enough necessarily to save JB. Maybe it's enough to save Donovan. And so there's a method behind the madness.
What do you mean by
in terms of if they lose in the first round again, I think you have a really hard case to make of re-signing Donovan.
Oh, I see.
So you win in the first round, you advance, you win a game in Boston, which was pretty impressive. The roster was decimated by the end. I still think he did. I think JB, this team did not underachieve necessarily. They made it to the second round.
No,
they lost to the number one seed.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we expected to happen.
Yeah, so it's not like they underachieved. They didn't. I think that for what they were and what they are, they met expectations. And they're still firing the coach anyway.
But part of the reason the expectations were where they were is because of the lack of progress of Garland and Mobley. Had those guys progressed to where we expected them to be by now, then the expectations would have been higher, and that's got to at least partly be on JB.
I said, if you want to make the case to fire him, you can look at Darius and Evan.
Right.
And that is reason enough to fire the guy if that's the route you want to go. I would argue, even if Evan did progress offensively, I still don't know. I mean, I don't know. Boston is a head case. Like, they are so much better than what they've played at times.
Yeah.
I can't figure that team out. But I would still pick Boston. In October, I thought Boston was going to win a championship.
I'm just saying, like, it's hard. You got to try to picture, okay, if you've been extremely high on Evan Mobley from the beginning.
Yeah.
If Evan,
and I admit, he has not lived up to where I thought he would be.
And still possibly will, but to this point he hasn't. If Evan Mobley, in theory, had reached where you thought he'd be by year 3, and Darius Garland had just not regressed, he was just the same player he was 2 years ago, this whole season, maybe they're right there with the Celtics in the standings.
They could be, yes. I still don't think they beat Boston this year. I don't think. I just thought Boston was too good. Now, it turns out maybe it's because of the lack of a team to really push them. They're just so scatterbrained and all over the place. They just haven't. I think that they've, even though they're in the conference finals, it sort of feels like they've underachieved at this point. And maybe you're right. Maybe if those things did happen, maybe we would look at this differently. Maybe Boston would have played better because they would have had an actual team pushing them. I don't know. I'm just saying, as we sit here today, it doesn't feel like the Cavs necessarily underachieved.
Not this year. I mean,
and you firing your coach anyway. Why? Like, JB, you say he has his flaws, and they are too pick and roll heavy. You are 100% right. I've said that for years. They just come down, run a pick and roll, and then it's just get open and take a shot. And it just feels like they could do so much more offensively. I throw my hands up for 2 years, give Evan the first touch every time down, get him activated early. They don't do that. So there are plenty of things that you could do. That and maybe if he brought in another coach who would be an offensive coordinator type, maybe that would have helped him. But with all that being said, he is still the most successful coach that they've had in the last 30 years without LeBron, without the luxury of LeBron. Any coach that they've had there since Mike Fratello, JB's had the most success. He's fifth or sixth on the all-time wins list among coaches. So, like, he's done a good job. And I'm just curious, to see how they present this. Sounds like tomorrow when Kobe talks about why they're doing this.
And Kobe's got to take the hit. It doesn't matter. He can't blame Donovan Mitchell. He can't blame the players.
Of course not.
But the reality is that the NBA, more than any other league, is run by the players. I mean, the star of the team controls everything. And if you want to keep that star happy, like it or not, I know there's people that are aggravated by it. It is what it is.
Yes.
And you're right in what you said before. There's going to be fans that are going to get angry because they always get upset because Donovan Mitchell's never going to admit he wanted JB out of here.
Of course not.
That doesn't benefit him in any way. But with 100%, like, there's no doubt that and Donovan Mitchell doesn't owe it to JB to like him.
No, he doesn't.
He's a good coach.
And I want to be perfectly clear on this because I know this is going to come back to me. It wasn't just Donovan in the locker room. It ran deep of complaints and guys who did not like JB. It ran fairly deep on the roster. My only point is, and Tyvus knows this because he's been in the locker room, you follow the leader. If the leader's
That's
got
right.
that guy's back, everybody else is going to fall in that line. If the leader doesn't have that guy's back, everybody else is going to fall in that line.
That's right. And by the way, whenever you're going to make a coaching change, you have to have a pulse of what the team's best player thinks. You know, even beyond basketball, right? I mean, let's say the Chiefs start to struggle and they go downhill, and they're thinking about saying maybe Andy Reid's too old. I don't know. You know, they're not going to have a feel for what Patrick Mahomes feels about the situation. Of course, any superstar player is going to have, whether you call it say or not, their opinion is going to be important. Their feelings are going to be important.
This is a critical summer.
Oh yeah,
for the Cavs. There are so many decisions to make.
And before we get to that, and I know Mike has something here, so one second.
Yeah, I don't necessarily want to veer off topic.
But once we get to that, I think a question that we all have to ask, and I think you'd have the best feel for this, is do you trust Dan Gilbert and Kobe Altman to hire the next right guy? Because there's no obvious slam dunk candidate, I don't think. But
no, there's not.
Anyway,
and that's part of the danger.
Right.
In doing this right now.
That you get another coach.
How often has the fan base, or have y'all thought to yourself, this should be the guy that they absolutely sign or hire, and they actually went with that guy? In all of Cleveland sports.
With coaches?
Yeah.
It's hard because, like, who knew Stephen Vogt before? You know what I mean?
I had heard lots of good things, but he had never managed before.
Right. And that's a guy just 2 years removed. So you just don't know. And you don't know until you know. And then it's too late, one way or the other.
There's been two examples in Cleveland since I've been here where I said they should hire this guy, and I was right. Now, I was right that they hired him. In one case, they got it right, Terry Francona.
Okay.
In the other case, they hired the guy, but I was wrong, and so was everybody else.
Hugh Jackson.
And that's Hugh Jackson.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
To Jason's point about JB losing the locker room, Jason and I have had conversations all season. I heard from other people who Jason doesn't know, where midway through the year, there were some veteran guys who were not necessarily agreeing with the way JB was running practices. And it's a fine line in how you coach, especially during the season and the limited practices, of allowing guys to rest and recover versus practicing hard. JB was a guy who wanted his team to practice hard every single time they were on the court. And when you're a veteran player who's made deep playoff runs in the past, that's hard to kind of buy into over the stretch of the season. I'm not sure when it came to decision time if other voices, how heavily they were listened to from the top parts of the Cavaliers organization. But it definitely is not just a Donovan, JB schism within the Cavs locker room. It goes way deeper than just one player in particular.
And you know what's interesting about what you just said is when this team was overachieving a couple years ago and they were like the feel-good story in the league, go back even before the Donovan trade, when they were playing really well and they were sort of emerging.
Right.
I asked JB one night, how do you get these guys to play hard every night? Like, how do you trick them into playing this hard? Because how many times did we say the Cavs just play harder than other teams? And, I mean, I covered the league for 10 years. A lot of teams that reach championship-type levels, play hard for about 7-8 minutes a night. And they're just coasting the rest of the time. And then you can almost, like, if you're around it long enough, you can feel it, you can see it. It's like, okay, go.
Yeah.
And the LeBron Cavs used to do it all the time. It'd be a 2-point game, boom, they'd go, it's a 12-point game, okay, we're good, throttle back, on to the next city, on to the next night. Those teams, because they were so young, they played so hard. And to Mike's point, they practiced hard. But then things turn because then you bring veterans in.
Right.
And then you bring in, then your expectations change a little bit. And then the young guys aren't quite as young anymore. So it's hard to continue to go full throttle that way, the way that they did a couple years ago. And I think Mike just illustrated that point of they used to play so hard every single minute of every single night. They were beating teams they probably shouldn't be beating, and they were doing it by just playing hard. But ultimately, there comes a point where that sort of runs out a little bit. Yeah. And I think we maybe saw a little bit of, and every coach has, players grumble about every coach. And I have heard JB's very heavy-handed in practices. They've got this massive coaching staff. But at practices and shoot-arounds, JB is he's doing everything. He has to be in control of everything. Okay, fine. But you know, and then there are other critics, and guys were grumbling over minutes. Well, any player who isn't playing is going to be grumbling over minutes. So some of this stuff is just baseline complaints
Do you think he was unfairly fired? I mean, it sounds a little bit like you think he's unfairly fired.
I just think it was he really impressed me this postseason. They struggled more with Orlando than they should have. I actually thought they competed better with Boston than they should have, given all of their roster limitations.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I said this on the radio. I don't know if I said this on here. The day of Game 5, when they're competing their asses off, and they're missing a lot of guys. And obviously, the story that we wrote was already, for the most part, done. So we're sitting back and watching the game, and I'm texting with Joe and Shams. And I said, they're going to fire this guy. Like, look how this team's competing. You don't have to like your coach. You may not like him, but they are, and I know it was a gentleman's sweep, but I mean, look at how banged up they were and who they were missing by the end. I thought that they really competed and showed themselves well in that Boston series, given their limitations. And I said earlier, you can make the case for firing them, and it's a strong case. But I do think that it's thin on who you're going to go get, and it's a risk. That you're not necessarily going to get better just because you made this move. That's the goal.
That's true.
Do you think that they can win a championship with JB?
As currently constructed, no. I don't think this is a championship roster. Not right now.
So, but you think he's a championship quality coach?
But I think if you tweak a couple of pieces, and again, like how many times have we talked about, like, go back to the Browns, Kevin and AB. You get better the longer you do things.
Yes.
You make mistakes early on. You learn from those mistakes. Kevin's a better coach now than he was 3 years ago. JB, I think, is 45, 46 years old. This is his 4th year as an actual head coach. He's been the cleanup guy throughout his life. Mm-hmm. In Houston, he was the cleanup guy. Kevin McHale got fired. He came in and cleaned up the mess, and then they swept him out and they brought in somebody else. Memphis, David Fizdale gets fired. He comes in and cleans up the mess. He gets one more year. And then the owner shocked everybody and fired everybody. So he's always been sort of that cleanup guy. Here, John Beilein runs out of the building running and screaming and puking at the All-Star break. And JB is left to clean up the mess. And then he gets the job. And every year he got a little bit better. Is he a perfect coach? Absolutely not. No. And we have and could continue to point out some of the flaws. I'm just saying, he's better than a lot of the ones that are out there. And you better be careful, because you're not necessarily going to get better just because you made this move today. So I'm sort of like, I think part of me understands why they did it, and part of me thinks he got a raw deal. That's my honest opinion.
There could be both.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I've been so gung-ho about firing JB Bickerstaff, but now that we're sitting and having this thoughtful conversation, really breaking it down and being less emotional about it, yeah, I mean, in a way, it is unfair.
Yeah.
But that's just the way life is in the NBA.
That's true.
And if your superstar, and again, I know you guys keep saying it's not just Donovan. I get it. You're right, of course. But if your superstar doesn't believe in you,
and you can't get that back. Once you lose the locker room, there's no going back. And you can find an example of where, in any sport, Tyvis Bull, I ask you, if a coach has lost the locker room,
you can't get it back.
You can't get it back,
no.
And that's why in this question of was it the right move or the move they had to make, I think it's both.
Yeah.
Because I think once that connection to your players is gone, I just don't think it can be salvaged. And at that point, it's a lost cause to try and run it back. Even though, to Jason's point, I do think JB sometimes gets overly criticized for some of the good things he had done this season and over the last few seasons here in Cleveland. Yeah. It was a ship that had sailed. And now it's time to find your next vessel.
Right.
And by the way, not only did he lose the locker room, but the star player is up for an extension this summer.
Right.
I mean, that cannot be overlooked.
That's a big part of this.
And the player wins that battle every single time.
But I think it's a fair question to ask, A, is there a better coach out there? And B, do you trust Dan Gilbert / Kobe Altman to be able to identify who that better coach is? Because there's no obvious answer.
Yes, it is. It's LeBron James / Ty Lue.
Well, they're not getting Ty Lue.
Not getting Ty.
You never
honestly,
know.
Like,
you never know.
I'm not going to.
I was about to
You almost got me. You almost got me.
Ty Lue?
I'm
Ty Lue ain't signed his extension with the Clippers.
By the way, let me just ask you this about Ty Lue. I mean, obviously, it ended kind of awkwardly here when he ended. Would that part of it prevent him from coming back?
I don't think Ty's not coming back.
Okay, but is it because of that, or just because he's not?
number one, I think he's happy in L.A.
Right.
And number two, I think that they mended things, but
Yeah.
it was – I don't know if it really got out how badly it ended with him here. It was bad. It was ugly. And I think, time has passed and wounds have mended a little bit, and I think the parties involved sort of talked it out, but Ty's not coming back.
So let's look at some. You had a list yesterday.
Yeah,
Mike.
we got some candidates. Let me do a read real quick,
Okay,
and
go
we'll get
ahead.
into some candidates. We'll break down the pros and cons of each as we prepare for the next chapter of Cavs coaching saga. A quick reminder, if you want to see whoever the new head coach is of the Cavaliers next season, you better be buying your tickets on the Game Time app. There's no better way or easier place to find tickets than Game Time, which is now an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA. They have priority last-minute deals. You can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy shows, theaters, whatever you want. They have flash deals, zone deals, all in pricing, so you get to see the total view from your seat and the total price in your cart without those surprise checkout fees. Their lowest price guarantee will credit you 110% of the difference if you can find a cheaper ticket online. Plus, their ticket coverage, make sure you have the most flexible customer service policy in the entire online ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app now, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Once again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. So we went through some of these yesterday, Bull, and we quickly mentioned it. And I said didn't want to dive into the potential replacements for JB Bickerstaff until he was fired, and now that is officially official. So let's run down a list. These are guys I think make sense for what the Cavs are looking for.
Yeah.
These are names that have now been associated to the Cavs. There's a few others that we'll mention, but at least 6 names to keep an eye on. And then I'll mention 1 or 2 more after.
Yeah.
Goes like this. Kenny Atkinson, who Adrian Wojnarowski said was the first guy they mentioned as a guy to watch to replace JB Bickerstaff. Chris Quinn, who has been on Spoelstra's bench with the Heat for a decade now, played in Cleveland, could be a name to watch. James Borrego, who had the Charlotte Hornets head coaching job from 2018 to 2022. He's a Spurs assistant. He's been bounced around the league, a 2-time champion with the Spurs. Sam Cassell, Dave Yeager, and Johnny Dawkins, 3 other candidates to keep an eye on. We also have heard Micah Nori, the assistant from Minnesota, who's filling in for Chris Finch, as another person to watch, just like Dave Adelman, the top assistant in Denver. Just a couple names. I'll save my thoughts for the end, but Jason, any of these ones
Before
in particular
you jump
stand
into
out
these
to you?
candidates, because yesterday I mentioned Atkinson too, and I mentioned another candidate who I know some people are going to roll their eyes, and it's
JJ Redick?
No,
Becky
and it's
Hammond.
probably not going to
Even
happen.
crazier.
But the reality is that nobody on that list has anywhere close to the resume that Becky Hammond does. She was an assistant with San Antonio, obviously, part of a great organization.
Yeah.
She's won consecutive championships in the WNBA. She was a magnificent player. She won everything. And I don't know who's going to be the first team to do it because teams are generally gutless, and the sex of the coach should be irrelevant. Sexism within the players, obviously, we talk about the players. Are they going to respect the women's coach? Some young men are just not mature enough that they would, they're going to allow their biases to get in the way. So I don't know that she's ever going to get a real serious chance, but in my opinion, there's nobody more qualified than her. But I don't know that she's going to get a real opportunity.
I have, and like Shams and I and
Yeah.
Joe and I have talked about this at length about candidates and names that we've
Yeah.
heard. That name has not come up at all. But the Cavs did hire Lindsey Gottlieb as an assistant a few years ago, and I think they are the progressive type of organization. If they felt she was the best candidate, I don't think they'd have any qualms in hiring her. I mean that.
Right.
But I have not heard her name to this point. Doesn't mean it can't happen.
Yeah, sure.
Just haven't heard it come up.
So Atkinson seems to be
the
coming up.
two names that I would circle on that are Kenny Atkinson and Borrego, and just file this away in the back of your head. Both of them are rep by CAA, which reps Donovan Mitchell.
Aha.
So
And now Atkinson took an awful
the Nets were
Nets
in
team.
a horrible spot.
That was the year that Kyrie.
Mike probably remembers when he got fired. When he took over, they were a wreck. They had no picks. They had no hope. They had no future. Like, they were as
Right.
low as you can go.
But wasn't that the year that the Cavs had their pick because of the Kyrie trade?
Yeah.
And we all assumed they would be one of the top, and they ended up being, like, very
No,
competitive.
I mean, that's one of the reasons I did not like that trade at all, was because the Nets had no reason to tank, and they wound up being better. He did a nice job.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't remember right now all the specifics of why he was fired and when he was fired.
I could give you real quick.
Yeah.
He is in a similar situation to JB Bickerstaff was when he came to Cleveland. He took over an absolute mess.
Yes.
A super young team. They played extremely hard for Kenny Atkinson. As soon as KD and Kyrie came in, they said, we don't like this guy. We want Steve Nash.
There you go.
Yeah, and he obviously coached Jared Allen. He coached Karis LeVert with the Nets. I don't know what their relationship was, so I don't know if that matters. And, you know, it sounds like Jared Allen's not going to be here next year.
Is
so
Karis LeVert on the contract for next season?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So what do you know? What do you hear? What is it about, besides the obvious of what he did with the Nets, what do you hear about Atkinson?
Well, here's what's interesting about this whole thing is Dan, before he had his health issues, hated retread coaches.
Right.
Never wanted to hire a retread.
Right.
And that's how you wind up with John Beilein and David Blatt. It's because he wanted to outsmart everybody.
Right.
And think outside the box. Now, Byron Scott was a retread, but he wanted Tom Izzo. And I'm going somewhere with this, so just hang with me.
Okay.
So Tom Izzo is who he wanted to replace Mike Brown when Mike Brown was fired the first time. And he went hard after Tom, and Tom really considered it, ultimately said, no, I'm staying where I am. And then Dan turned to his front office and said, go get the best guy. And so they went and got Byron Scott. So Dan had his guy that he wanted, pursued him aggressively, couldn't get him, pivoted and said, go get the best guy you can. And that's how they wound up with Byron Scott. And Byron was not a great coach, but he was exactly what they needed at that time. I thought Byron did a tremendous job that first year or two after LeBron to carry them through the mess and muck that they had to go through. And then if you fast forward, so then the David Blatt was all Dan. Nobody thought he was going to get that job.
Right.
Like, I remember, I've mentioned this before, he tells Steve Kerr, hey, I got an opportunity, because remember, Blatt was supposed to be Steve's top assistant in Golden State and learn the league. And he told Steve, I got an opportunity to interview, and Steve's like, yeah, go for it. Like, it's a good opportunity for you. Go get some experience. And then David called him back and said, hey, I'm getting the job. And Steve was like, what? Really? Okay, well, congratulations. Yeah. And that was all. But so they hire Ty Lue as sort of the axe and hose guy to come in and put out the fire when David Blatt burns the building down, which he more or less did. And then, but that was a Dan hire. Yeah. And now here you go again, you fire Ty. Yeah. And if you look at the list of candidates that the Cavs front office was looking at, it was all young, up and coming. Jamal Mosley was on that list. I think Jordy Fernandez may have been on that list. Yeah. And then they go and hire John Beilein. And you're like, well, that doesn't fit with what they had been looking at. Well, that was Dan again. And the Cavs go, well, we got to get somebody. We got to get an axe and a hose in here again to clean up the. So then you go and you get JB.
Right.
So that was all before he had his health problems. So honestly, I don't know now how this is going to go. If Dan Hurley is the next coach of the Cavs, Dan's back.
That was G. Bush's guy yesterday.
I say yeah, G. Bush wanted
that would be a Dan move all the way. Like, that's a Dan move because he never liked retread coaches. Yeah. He always wanted to think outside the box. He always wanted to go get and like, he swings big. Yeah. He swings big. But the thing doesn't always connect, but he swings big.
We're going to butcher this, aren't we?
What's that?
They're going to butcher this, aren't they?
Well, not necessarily, because again, I don't think there are a lot of coaches out there who are retreads of retreads of retreads.
Why does it seem like we gotta get a new coach, fire him, and then get?
Well, hopefully that won't be the case.
That's been the trend.
It has been. Hopefully that will change. The thing about retread coaches is they have that experience and they can build on that.
Yes.
So and it doesn't always mean they're going to be better next time around.
Now that's why I don't think it's not fair to necessarily dismiss a guy as a retread because he didn't work out elsewhere, because of what we just talked about. Every young coach makes mistakes and learns from that and gets better at it. I had a great conversation with Mike Brown about that, he wasn't very well liked in Cleveland when he was here. Players didn't like him. They didn't like him in L.A. either. But he went to Golden State, he learned from it, changed some things, and now he's doing a great job in Sacramento. So you got to give guys a chance to evolve. And could Atkinson be that? Could Borrego be that? neither one of those names excite me to where I'm pounding the table saying you got to go get that guy. Chris Quinn is the type of guy. Chris is an intriguing candidate to me. He was
Columbus,
here,
Ohio.
He was here briefly at the end of his career, of his playing career. He's in that Heat culture now. He's being groomed as a Miami assistant and has certainly learned how to do things the right way.
Yeah.
So if you want to go the really young route, which I don't know that they want to do, this is a team ready to. This is a good job. That needs to be said too.
Yeah.
This is an attractive job for candidates right now. This is not a bad job. So it's going to elicit a lot of attention. Do you want to entrust that with a guy who's never been a head coach before? It worked great in Golden State with Steve Kerr. Yeah. That team exploded. Kind of a similar situation to this. Steve Kerr came in and they exploded in a good way.
Well, Mark Jackson laid down the foundation.
That's what I'm saying.
Which
So
is very similar to
now
what we got here. JB kind of laid the foundation.
That's what I'm saying.
You just
It's
need
a
somebody
similar-
to take it.
Mike
the next
wanted
step.
to jump in. Go
One
ahead.
point
Mike.
on retread coaches too, especially guys who get a chance when they're younger and don't have the success. I'll use Borrego for an example. He's not the only one, but Borrego is a perfect example. He was a hot young assistant. Charlotte scoops him up. That Charlotte roster was horrific all 4 years he was there. His career record is not impressive, 148 and 183 in 4 seasons with Charlotte. There's maybe 1 or 2 coaches in the world, and that may even be too many. I'm not even sure Spo could figure out a way to get the roster led by LaMelo Ball to be a 500 playoff level team. So to look at his resume and say, well, he'd have success in Charlotte doesn't mean he can't have success elsewhere. I just think that's unfair because a lot of these young head coaches who get their first head coaching gig get it with a team in a complete rebuild mode. And unless you strike gold in the lottery and get an Anthony Edwards with the first overall pick or get a Wemby or someone like that, you're going to have a severely undermanned roster. So I'm not as against retread coaches at some others because I think there's a lot more context that goes into why they didn't succeed the first time than just looking at the big picture and saying, well, he wasn't very good in Charlotte. He can't be good here.
To that point, if I'm another organization, I'd bring JB Bickerstaff in.
I was just going to say, if I'm the Washington Wizards, why would you not hire
He'd actually
JB?
be perfect in Washington.
Right? Another team to build up. But the thing about Quinn that's interesting, the most interesting thing, of course, is what Jason said, that he's in that Miami organization. And Miami's got the best coach in the NBA.
Yes.
So even though he doesn't have experience, he's been with Miami since when?
2014.
Miami
is
is-
his 10th season with Spo.
Miami is the crown jewel organization. of the
Exactly.
NBA, as far as I'm concerned.
And this guy's his lead assistant, right?
San Antonio's really good too.
Yeah.
But Miami, just the way that they run things and the way they do things,
Yeah.
in my opinion, I think Miami's the best. In the
Why
business.
has he not gotten an opportunity yet, you think?
He will.
No, but he's been there 10 years.
Yeah, but he's still,
He's still young in the coaching.
yeah, JB
Okay.
JB was an assistant for, I think, 12 or 13 years.
I mean, it
before he
seems
got-
like he seems like a really smart hire because he's been he's been an assistant as a decade for the best coach in the NBA, I think.
Yeah. But he wasn't like JJ Redick had a pretty decorated career.
Right, sure.
Chris
But
Quinn
why
did
does
not.
that matter?
It matters.
You would take JJ over Chris?
No,
Paul?
I'm just
You
saying
mean it
like,
matters in terms of the relationship with the players?
owners make these calls.
Oh, I see.
And owners get
But it
blinded
shouldn't
by.
matter.
Well, of course it does. So I just think that plays a little bit of a role in it that he didn't have this illustrious career that some of the other guys did. He probably maybe was approached and he's waiting for the right situation. I don't know. I know Chris a little bit. I don't know him extremely
Right.
well, but good guy. Like I enjoyed him when he was here as
I
a
know
player
his
at the end
dad.
of his career.
I know his dad. His dad is on the Buckeye. He runs the Buckeye Cruise for Cancer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I knew that.
So he's from Columbus, Ohio.
is his name Bob? Is his dad Bob?
No, his dad's name's Chris.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you would think if you were him, you'd want to take this job, your home state.
This is a good job.
It's a team that can win.
This is a good job.
Yeah.
It will attract a lot of attention.
Go ahead, Mike.
One thing on Chris Quinn, too, I think I mentioned this briefly yesterday, but he was instrumental in Miami turning Bam Adebayo from a guy who had no offensive game coming out of Kentucky to one of the focal points of their offense and specifically a playmaking role, which, as we all look at this Cavs roster, I think we all have the same vision of Evan Mobley potentially transitioning from a back-to-the-basket traditional power forward to more playmaking one-out five. So he could fit that sense, too, from what he did with Bam to what he can do with that.
By the way, who is the best coach in the NBA that was an excellent player? I mean, Steve Kerr was a bench player, nice player.
He's a good player. Best coach who was
Jason Kidd.
Jason, that's the right answer.
Yeah.
That's the
Okay.
right
Yeah.
answer. And Jason Kidd's a really good head coach.
Yeah, he is.
He's up 1-0.
But he's
right
bounced
now.
around a couple times,
Spoelstra didn't
too.
play in the NBA, right?
No.
Was his first
Neither
job
did
the
Popovich.
Bucks? Jason
J.
Kidd?
Kidd?
Because he the one that got Giannis to be like.
No, he was a
Nets.
Nets coach
Nets.
first.
Oh.
Yeah.
Remember, he spilled the drink on the court. He had to play around because they were
Wait,
out of timeout.
whoa! I didn't. Whoa! He did what?
He was taking a drink and he had his player run into him on the court because I believe they were out of timeouts.
He didn't have any timeouts, yeah.
So he said, "Hey, bump into me." so he spilled his drink on the court. So they had to stop the game to wipe it up. I mean, that's
smart.
Yeah.
think smarter, not harder. Work
Yeah.
smarter, not harder.
Jason, a couple other names that have been mentioned.
Funny.
Nori from Minnesota, Adelman from Denver. Other than watching them throughout the playoffs, I don't necessarily have any deeper insights into what they bring.
Yeah.
Do you know much about Nori or Adelman in particular?
No, not really. Their names haven't really come up. I've been asked about Terry Stotts a couple times by a couple different people. It's another one. Retread, who's been around for a while, good offensive coach. Have not heard his name, though, come up in this. Yeager is an interesting one because he was here already.
Yep.
And that's the one I was sort of circling. If they fired JB during the season, I thought he would get the job. And then curiously, he left when Doc got the job in Milwaukee, and it became sort of evident that he wasn't
Right.
going to be needed here, and that he was just an advisory role here. And then he left for Milwaukee when Doc took over the Bucks.
And he was with Doc in Philly beforehand.
Yes.
So
yes, good
it's
point.
worth mentioning.
I
Yeah,
think
and he had some health issues. He left because he was fighting cancer, and I believe he's all clear now, and that's why
He's all clear.
I've
Yep.
heard a lot of good things about him, just in terms of good coach. He's had a couple stints. He was in Memphis. He was in Sacramento, so he's a retread.
Yeah.
But
I think the bottom line on this is, and I'm in this boat too, be careful what you wish for, because no matter who the Cavs hire, there's no way you're going to be able to say with any kind of certainty that they have a better coach than they previously had.
yeah, you just don't know right now.
They
you can't say
might,
that.
and we
They
hope
might.
they get it right,
Yeah.
but there's no way you're going to know that going in.
I would have more faith in the front office making the choice than Dan, and I hope the front office gets to make the
Okay?
decision.
You have faith in Kobe.
I have more faith in the front office than Dan's over.
Yeah.
He's
Well, let me ask about this, Jason. A report from James Ham, an NBA insider in Sacramento, said the Kings ownership group is unhappy with Mike Brown. Is there any chance he can make a comeback?
Third time.
well, number one, they're idiots.
Yeah.
They're idiots. Like, he's done an amazing job in Sacramento,
They were a useless franchise forever.
and they will be again if they.
Yeah.
I don't think that they would move on from him. I did see that. Number two, Mike will never come back here.
Not a third time.
Mike will not come back.
He's done.
LeBron's
You
contemplating.
fire him twice, like you're out.
They got
That's it.
LeBron contemplating it.
Mike
Allegedly.
Brown, Mike Brown ain't coming back.
All right, Mike.
And
let's-
last but not least,
Yeah.
last question, and Brad's going to join us in a few minutes here
Yeah.
to give us his thoughts on the whole Cavs JB Bickerstaff situation. But when you look big picture, take names out of the equation. What do you want the next head coach of the Cavs to be?
Offensive sense.
Offensive-minded, young, offensive-minded guy who's had experience. Like, each will go around. Tyvus, will start with you and we'll end with you, Bull. But
wanna-
what attributes and characteristics do you want the next head coach of the Cavs to
Well, I
have?
think that defensively, I think that JB, like I said, he's done a great job of laying the foundation, and they've seen some success with it. So I don't need somebody that's going to be defensive-minded first. I need somebody with some offensive sense. I think that the biggest thing is that offensively we get to times where it's just stand around and watch Donovan. Like, I don't want to see that no more. I want to see some motions. I want to see some sets. I want to see some stuff moving. So I think you got to get an offensive-minded coach in that way, and he's got to be a guy that's got to be able to develop somebody. So like Chris Quinn developing Bam, okay, you got the same situation here with Evan. If we can get Evan to be something like Bam, like that ultimately makes our team better. So offensive-minded guy that can develop young talent really well, and I would like some playoff experience. That's my things.
Anytime you make a change, the pendulum always swings wildly the other way.
Yeah.
So you've got this defensive guy in JB. It's going to swing now to an offensive-minded guy. I would want somebody who can unlock Evan Mobley. Like someone who can prioritize his development on the offensive end. Defensively, he's fantastic. Someone, and I don't know who that someone is, but whoever can get Evan to fulfill his potential on the offensive side, because they have a decision to make on him this summer as well in terms of a contract. And I think I know which way it's going to go. So whoever they feel like, because if you can unlock Evan and you can get him to meet his offensive potential, that will take this team up a level or two. If you can keep Donovan, unlock Evan, you have to figure out what you're doing with Darius and Jarrett.
Yeah.
But that will elevate this entire organization.
Obviously, that's a huge key. You're going to want an offensive guy, I get it, or at least a head coach.
But you also don't want to obliterate the principles that you've established on the defensive side. So it's hard.
And so maybe the answer is you talked about JB. One of the complaints is he's got to be in control of everything. Well, maybe you have a head coach that is able to put aside his ego and say, hey, I'm the head coach, and I got this offensive guru with me here, and he's going to get the best out of Evan Mobley. But most importantly, I think in the NBA, it seems to me, Jason, that you have to find, and this is hard, probably, you have to find a head coach that will stand up to the best players on the team, but still get those guys to respect him. Right? You can't be a kiss ass to the superstar.
And that's what Ty did. That was Ty with LeBron. Oh, he stood up to like.
Exactly. Oh, I think you said he was a kiss ass. I was like, no,
he gave them rope. It's exactly what you're talking about. He gave them plenty of rope and leash. We've talked about it multiple times. They shut down the season, went and got drunk for 2 days in Napa. But then when he had to rein them in and pull them in, he was in LeBron's face at halftime of Game 7 saying, I need more out of you.
That's right. And that's hard to find that balance.
It is.
Right? But that's ultimately what every team is looking for.
Yeah.
Because if you just kiss your superstars, if the next coach is like, well, JB got fired because Donovan didn't like him, so I'm going to kiss his ass, well, that's not going to work.
No.
So I think, who that person is, I don't know, but you got to find that guy.
I have learned, and I was, to be honest, unaware of this until some of my friends started getting higher and higher in the NBA coaching ranks. It's not just a head coach anymore. Like, these staffs are intricate. There are offensive coordinators, there are defensive coordinators, the player development guys, JB staff. There was like 35 guys on the Cavs staff this year. It was insane. Whoever they hire as the head coach, I think has to be a guy that they identify as the number one guy who can get the most out of the guys on the roster. Philosophy, offensively and defensively, be damned, because you could hire an offensive coordinator or a defensive coordinator. It has to be a guy the players relate to, who they can wring out the most talent from the potential on this roster. And then you can fill out the rest of your staff with an offensive genius and a defensive genius. But it's more like a football staff. And Jason, if I'm wrong, please tell me if I'm missing the nail on this one. But these staffs are deep, and they have different categorized and specialties within the staff. That the head coach is more, not a figurehead. I'm not taking away what they do. They're obviously a very, very important part. But there are certain factions of a staff that are offensive-minded. There are certain factions of staff that are defense-minded. You have an out-of-bounds timeout play underneath the basket, specialty guys. It's more of a CEO than it is a specific coach now. So I'm less worried about exactly what a head coach can do, but how well he can assemble an overall staff.
It's so funny we talk so much about, not just us, but in general, people that cover sports, you talk so much about the offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. Like, we know most of the OCs and DCs in the NFL, but in basketball, it doesn't really get talked about that same way.
No. In fact, the first time I really heard it, I don't know if it was, I'll go back to the Mike Brown example again in Sacramento. Jordy was his offensive coordinator.
Who just got hired to be the Nets head coach, by the way.
Yeah, and then he had another, I forget who was his defensive guy, even though Mike is a defensive genius. He had another guy on his staff who was sort of the defensive guy. Mike Longobardi, when Ty was here, Mike Longobardi was the defensive coach.
Right, yeah.
But then when it got to the postseason, Ty took that over and started really digging in on what they were doing defensively. He trusted Mike to do it during the regular season, and then Ty took it over during the postseason.
Thibodeau was the defensive coordinator for Doc Rivers.
Yes, that's right.
Like, that might be the most famous example
You're right.
of that. But
I
Tibbs
forgot
was
about that. Yep.
Doc's,
I thought it was,
defensive coordinator.
what's his name? Adam Sandler's character. What was his name?
In Hustle?
In Hustle, yeah.
Well, he was a scout.
No, but he was becoming an assistant coach. That's part of the movie.
At the end, he became a coach.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I thought you meant
Sonny,
like who
what
Adam
was his name?
Sandler's actually
Sonny
playing. Not sure.
Finkelstein?
We're going to welcome in Brad in a second.
Yeah,
Let me get a
something
read
like
in.
that.
Let me get a read in real quick, so when Brad hops on, we'll get him right in here.
right.
And today's a reminder that today's show is sponsored by Yahoo Finance. Wouldn't it be great if you could see all your investment and retirement accounts in one place? With Yahoo Finance, you can consolidate your views from multiple accounts into one hub and access expert analysis you need to tend to your entire portfolio with confidence. So let's get straight to the point. If you want to grow your portfolio to deal with the rising cost of inflation, to pay off your debts or your mortgage, pretty much anything standing in your way, well, Yahoo Finance is here to help. You can get access to the news, data, tools that you need in order to reach that financial freedom you crave. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or looking for that extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and data you need in one place. They're the #1 finance destination, producing holistic looks at the financial news cycle, including breaking news, original editorial perspectives, analyst ratings, independent research, customizable charts, and so much more. So make sure you head over to yahoofinance.com to find all of this for a comprehensive financial news and analysis. Visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com, the #1 financial destination. Once again, that is yahoofinance.com. Brad should be hopping on any second, but before we welcome Brad, any final thoughts? And we'll spend more time on this tomorrow, obviously, but final thoughts.
Translation,
on the news.
Mike is like, we need to kill time till Brad
we got to kill 1 minute till Brad hops on. So,
is there any way that Kobe doesn't make it out of this?
No, Kobe's safe.
Okay,
he's safe.
Just out of curiosity.
Mavericks get the Game 1 victory against Minnesota last night.
That boy Kyrie went crazy. Oh, my God. I know you hate him, but that man is just, it's poetry emotion.
Somebody said, who was it yesterday that said they're the greatest backcourt ever?
He is unbelievable. Anthony Edwards, boy, you gotta lace him up.
Greatest backcourt ever?
Somebody
I
said
think Steph and Klay Thompson might have something to say about that.
Yeah, I mean,
Joe Dumars and Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah, there's no. First of all, they only played together for
two Hall of Famers.
2 years.
For 2 years. Last year they were terrible.
Yeah, that's prisoner of the moment.
I mean that
that's prisoner of the moment.
Maybe he meant just their skill set.
I mean they're both wonderful talents.
Oh, skill set wise, they are probably.
I would take
#1.
I would take Dumars and Isaiah and Klay and Steph over both of those.
From a skill
right
set
now.
standpoint.
Dennis Johnson and Danny Ainge. I'm kidding.
Yeah. I mean that's another good one.
It is good. It's
good.
not close to that, but let's see.
I'm up here trying to think of
what about Magic and
Byron. It was Magic
yeah.
and Byron.
Magic was.
And I mean, Magic and Byron. Kobe didn't really have a great point guard.
No.
Derek.
Did you see that? Did you see that conversation when recently Draymond and Shaq were talking?
Yeah.
Draymond said that how he would check Shaq.
Yeah, and Shaq's just like.
He said I would be in front of you and we have Bogut behind you and I would just
Shaq
not let you get
started laughing.
And then he said, who would check Kobe? Klay.
With that, let's welcome in Brad Sellers. He works for the Cavs. He's part of the UCSS family. Brad, how you doing this morning? I know it's a tough day when a team has to relieve their head coach of his duties.
Well, Mike, I'm doing good. I'm doing good today. Okay, you guys hear me?
Yes. We hear you fine, Brad. Good to see you again. Do you think the Cavs did the right thing in firing JB or no?
Well, whether it's the right thing or not, I just think that there comes a point in time here where organizations always decide whether they are headed in the right direction. And let me be clear, it has nothing to do with JB as a person. And I thought he did an outstanding job for the stuff he was handled from the beginning, from his onset here, and where he ultimately left off here with the Cavaliers. But there's always a time where people are always reassessing. I said that after the season, I think on our final broadcast, there will be only one team that isn't really reassessing where they are, and that's the ultimate winner of this NBA title this year.
Brad, now that it's official that JB is gone, have you had time to process some of the other candidates out there and who you think that they should be looking at?
Well, you got to make a decision, Ty, as to where you're going here, right? You got to understand that this league is younger, so there's an idea that you have to be able to have a good rapport with some of the younger talent. But Tavis, as you know, this league has to have leadership and to a point where people understand ultimately what you do on the floor is how you're judged. And that goes from the coaches to the players to everything else. I mean, obviously that the decision has been made for the organization that they're moving forward. But when I look out here on the landscape, you got a couple routes to go. You can go untried and true talent. I see J.J. Redick's name being bounced around a bunch of places, guys who have never coached before, but that don't mean they don't have an acumen for knowing the game of basketball. Then you have guys like Frank Vogel, who just got released, guys like that in that realm, which we would probably call retreads, or you can get creative out here. I've always wondered why, there's Mark Jackson sitting on the sidelines for a number of years now, and for teams that are looking to make a change. I mean, is a person like that considered?
Brad, these are obviously complicated, and there's not just one quality, but if you had to pick, what's the most important quality they need to find in the next coach?
Well, I just think that you got to have, and I don't know the dynamics totally of JB's locker room, because there's always, and Jason, there's always people biting at you, all the time. Everybody's not always pleased. I mean, I ain't walked in one locker room yet where everybody was happy, and that's just going to be the case. I think, though, that as you look forward, somebody's got to have a pedigree of understanding, one, what it means to be out here on a daily basis, making sure that the players are prepared to do that, so understanding what the work regimens are, making sure that people aren't overworked. Secondly, I'm from the old school. Ability, to me, equals availability. You have to be available to come to work. And I think that was one of the downfalls of having the JB. Everybody was out this year, right? And you see that does not have the weight that it once did, where people would say, okay, he didn't have everybody. They obviously felt that they had to make a move. And I think from the standpoint of that, Jason, the next person coming in here, it's probably going to be a brand new ball game. Because the one thing, if I can read in between the tea lane, because I read, Jason, I read your little article. I read your little article. let's keep
I think a lot of people over there did.
We'll keep it 100. I read your little article. And I'm going to just assume that you're coming from a source and not from the cup. So let's just assume that is the case, right? The one thing that players do want, they want to be coached. I haven't met a real player that didn't want to be coached. And that sometimes is really holding people accountable. And the next person here is, there's a distinct difference with what could happen here. You could get a hardliner in here like Tibbs in New York. He's a hardliner. Tibbs was my coach in Minnesota. Right? They're no nonsense guys. They want to hear your story. What time is work? Are you there? And if you're not there, then you go sit down in the corner. And when you go forward here, it seems like to me, if I read your story, there's certain players here that want to make sure that everybody's held accountable. Because you can't get to the mountaintop without ever being held accountable. Second thing is I think the landscape for what is in Cleveland, they have a good foundation. They got to shore up some things. Donovan Mitchell being one. Are you with us or are you not with us? I think that is an inclination for any new coach coming in here. You're going to want to know that.
Brad, do you think there's going to be, is it Donovan or Darius? Do you think one of them will be gone at the end of this, this offseason, or not necessarily?
Well, I think that's going to be measured. I think they've run the gamut of trying to have two small guards in the backcourt, and I would say with mixed results.
Yeah.
And at some point, either it is or it isn't. But you can't squint your eyes and make something that is not is. If you understand what I'm saying. Right, yeah. So I think there's enough bandwidth for two, because I heard you guys talk about Joe and Zeke, and I played with Joe and Zeke. It can be done, but there has to be a understanding of where we're going, and understanding of where we're going is that we're doing whatever it takes to win it all, and if that requires me to give up a little bit of myself and let somebody else come in and do a little bit more, then that's the case. But to be honest with you, it takes a certain type of person to understand that. Now, I don't know what the dynamics are, but on a talent level, is there room that it can be done? Yeah. But I don't know what they're going to do, but they're going to do. I think the first marker bull is Donovan Mitchell coming back or not?
Right, yeah.
Yep.
Because if he says he doesn't want to come back, then that's going to leave them with, to me, very few cards to play.
Yeah. Last thing, Brad, who's going to win the NBA title this year?
Well, I don't know, but I would tell you this. I've enjoyed the playoff run. I really enjoy watching Minnesota. I mean, they're enjoyable. I don't think Indiana, what I saw in the meltdown the other day, has just proved to me that they're not ready to do it. Now, Kyrie has been impressive, and those Mavericks have just kept coming. So I think it is, if I had to choose one, I think it's going to be the winner of the Minnesota-Dallas series because I'm not sold on Boston. Boston barely got away from us, and we didn't even have a full crew. I'm just telling you. Because if they had a full crew, they would have given them the business. Because you never know what team Boston going to show up.
That's right.
Yeah, that's true. Brad, good stuff,
Come on,
man.
Tyvus. You usually quick-witted. I ain't hear nothing from Tyvus today.
Nothing, Tyvus?
What you mean?
Come on, man. I thought you was a savant. Basketball savant.
Listen, I right now, if you're talking about the remaining 4 teams in the playoffs, it's hard.
Yeah.
I know everybody is on this Minnesota train, man, but Kyrie got that experience, man, and he went out there and listen, poetry in motion, Brad. Poetry in motion. Anthony Edwards got to lace him up. He going to have to lace him up because my boy Kyrie ain't playing.
Look, Kyrie is playing, but I tell you what, a lot of poets and painters and muses didn't get recognized today was dead. So I don't care what you're talking about.
Thanks, Brad. We appreciate
The question
it.
is, will the Timberwolves bounce back the next game?
Yeah, they got it.
They better. Well, I mean, they showed they.
Yeah.
I mean, they showed they can. You know what I'm saying? They can go 7 and win it. So it wouldn't be shocking.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Brad.
Thanks.
All
Brad.
right, guys. Good luck.
See you later.
All right. Bye-bye.
Hey, before we switch it up, real quick on Kyrie, because I don't remember who I heard say this, but I thought it was an interesting point. Since Kyrie left Cleveland,
He's 14-0 in closeout games.
he has what?
He's 14-0 in
Since
closeout
leaving
games.
Cleveland?
No,
that's
just
his
period.
career.
No, since leaving Cleveland until this year, Kyrie has made every team he's on worse. I mean,
Boston was a disaster.
Boston played,
But he was hurt.
Whenever he was out, they
Well,
played
heck,
better.
I'm about to say he been
And then
hurt.
he left, and they were better.
Yeah.
And then he went to
Brooklyn was a mess.
the Brooklyn, and they fell apart. And without him, they were better. And then he went to Dallas last year, and Dallas completely fell apart when he got there. For the first time since leaving Cleveland, he's now elevated a team, or at least helped elevate.
I think I thought Dallas, like full disclosure, I thought
Yeah.
Dallas was going to be a disaster. I thought they were nuts for bringing him
Yeah.
on. Felt like he was going to poison Luka in all the wrong
Right,
ways.
right.
I did not understand why they did that. It's turned out to be a great move, and I think Kyrie has done a lot of growing up in a very short amount of time, especially from the kid that I had when he was a kid, when he was here,
Yeah.
compared to the guy that I see now, night and day.
All right, we'll leave it there. We'll get to the Guardians in a little bit. First, some Browns OTA talk.
Yeah, we got to do it. And we got to remind the people that FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL right now, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/UCSS and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And we got a bunch of winning tickets over the last couple of days. Well, I'm going to get 2 in here real quick because we skipped the one earlier. The first comes from our guy, Darren Smith, who turned $10 into $535
Nice,
on a
Darren.
giant parlay in the Pacers-Celtics Game 1. And also, from the same game, our guy Paco Moreno turned $5 into $585.
Damn.
With the same game parlay from the same game. Paco and Darren both had the alternate overs on a bunch of different players. They all hit. Overtime certainly helps. But shout out to Paco and Darren for winning a combined $1,100 on $15 worth of bets. 2 big-time winners, so shout out to you guys. We'll get to more of you guys winning tickets in the coming days. We got a couple other giant winners from Tuesday and Wednesday that we'll make sure we feature. Speaking of the Browns, yesterday was the first day media was allowed into OTAs. Deshaun Watson did not throw. He went through mental reps. We saw Jamari Thrash and Nathaniel Watson,
I
2
did the
rookies,
same
make
thing.
plays. I said Thrash.
Did Mike
No.
just,
Mental
Mike
reps.
just say he went through mental reps?
That's what they're calling it.
That's,
That's
what they call
called
them,
it.
mental reps.
Let's see a play.
Stop it.
What
No,
is your guys' biggest
mental reps
takeaway?
is when
I
you,
know what they're
you
called,
stand
but
behind the dude.
I
and you
know
go
what it
through
is, Tyvus. It's the stupidest thing I've
Mental
ever heard.
reps.
Calling it mental reps.
So what's your guys' biggest takeaway from day 2 of Browns OTAs?
He looked great in those mental reps. Those mental reps.
Y'all is sick.
I gotta tell you.
Explain the point, Mr. Football. Tell us why those are so useful.
When you call it a mental rep, it's like it's meaningful when it's not meaningful.
Mental reps is one of those things. So the way it was described to me was what I learned in college is that for his situation is a little different, but for a guy who, like, say you're a fourth string backup, you won't get those practice reps. So in order to get your body accustomed to doing every rep and not missing a rep, they used to make you stand behind there and go through your progressions, go through your reads and stuff. So your body is used to taking that rep. So as in words, you've never missed a rep, and that's what he's doing.
You said that for the fourth string guys that don't play.
Well, he's
For the starting quarterback?
he is not going live. So they
Tyvus
want him
did
to
it.
be
You
out
can't
there.
even really explain
Listen,
it. It's totally
he's not
useless.
live today, so they don't want him to not get no reps. So he's going through the progressions. If
It's
he was
totally
still out there.
useless.
It's not useless.
All the beat reporters should
It's
not have tweeted that.
It's not useless.
It's laughable.
Actually,
I mean, every team does it. I
actually,
know.
you learn a lot. Because,
Okay,
because I'm gonna tell you why.
Yeah.
If you stand behind the guy, like for me, if I was a third string guy and maybe I didn't know everything, but me standing behind the starter and doing the rep, if he do something and I'm doing something totally different, now I'll be like, oh snap, I was wrong. Like it's learning it right there on the fly.
There is
but
value.
Totally agree as the third and fourth
Will you
stringer.
stop with
There
that?
is value in it. There's
Will
value in it.
you
There is.
stop
As
with
the
that?
starting quarterback, is there value in that?
Yes.
I mean, he's
going through the motions.
By the way, I am. I gotta say that
sick.
to answer Mike's original question. What was your original question again?
What was your biggest takeaway from day
I
2
mean,
of
the
Browns
biggest
OTAs?
takeaway from day 2 of OTAs or mini camp or whatever the hell they're calling it.
OTAs.
That's an easy answer, guys.
Was it the mental rep?
It was not the mental rep.
Thrash catching the seam route.
It was not Thrash catching the
The
seam.
Nathaniel Watson
Watson's
sliding
pick.
INT.
It was not, believe it or not, the sliding INT.
Za'Darius
Darius
Smith.
Smith cutting his hair.
It was not Za'Darius Smith cutting his hair.
Wow.
Jerry Judy being there.
No, it's the fact that anybody gives a shit. It's all meaningless for us.
For us,
It's value. There's value for them as part of the process. We learn nothing. Nothing. Maybe if Tyvus were there as a former player, he might learn a little something. But for fans and media, when we don't know as much as we think we know, it is meaningless. Let me make that clear again.
Wait.
It's not meaningless to the players. There's value there. But we're not learning anything, and there's nothing we should take away about mental reps and interceptions in practice.
Wait a minute.
It's freaking practice.
All right,
Not
let's
a
go to
game.
the Guardians then.
Not a game.
We're done with that.
We're talking about practice.
Wait a minute. Who is this? Who stole PJ's number?
Oh, you think they're going to retire it?
That's
Yes.
Put him in the Ring of
Huntley.
Honor?
Who is
I
that?
believe that is Tyler Huntley.
PJ Walker goes to the
See
Ring of
that?
Honor at
And you see,
halftime of
but
the Cowboys
y'all
game.
praise. Let me see this clip again. Y'all praise him,
Yeah.
Tyler Huntley, for being this Pro Bowler, but he throwing picks.
Not
First
a
of
single
all,
person has ever praised.
nobody's
Tyler
ever
Huntley
praised
for being a
him.
Pro Bowler.
It was a disgrace that he
All
was made
I'm
the Pro
saying is
Bowler.
everybody. Oh,
Nobody did
PJ's not even an NFL quarterback. He is.
Where is he now?
Stop it.
Is he on a roster?
It's a terrible
As
decision.
little as I think.
Look at this. Look at this.
Who cares? It's practice.
Also, practice is meaningless.
No, I didn't say that. I just said I don't care. That he threw.
Why did he not throw that back shoulder?
Why are they all running down the field?
You got to practice taking a return to the house. Listen,
That's a mental rep for.
Metal rep for all the guys of running down the field.
no, so in OTAs when somebody get a
Yeah.
pick defensively, it's
Yeah.
all a celebration because it's
Yeah,
like,
that's all right.
it's a pick, so it's
Yeah.
always a celebration. No, OTAs maybe for media people that don't understand football, maybe yes, it's meaningless.
That's all I'm saying. I'm not
Yeah.
saying it's meaningless for the
Yeah,
players.
but
I made
for
that
like
clear.
me, if I was out there, the thing that I would be noticing is the different sets that they're running offensively. What did Ken Dorsey? Let me see the spin on Ken Dorsey's playbook. What changed from when last year when they had this offense to now? Because installs is going in. This was day 2 of installs, so something new is going in that nobody knows.
Deshaun Watson is not running the offense, then how much are you learning at all?
I just want to see the sets. I want to see the routes that they running, the concepts, the formations. Is they really running a lot of 11 personnel? Is it 10 personnel? Do they still run 2 tight end sets? Like I want to see these things to see if it's a big difference offensively. Defensively, all I'm looking at is if they're making plays on the ball. That's my biggest thing for them. Getting more takeaways, making sure that these guys is healthy. Now seeing Dale Pitt back out there. I did want to see the rookies. Thrash catching this seam route. Can I see? Do you got that clip of this seam route that he caught? Let me see this seam route that he caught. Because if I was when I was a rookie in Seattle and this play happened, you would hear this coach saying, "Not another seam route." That's all you would hear, and then it would be ridiculous. Actually, he's the guy that I actually wanted to see in OTAs the most, because when I watched this clip, it wasn't nothing like he did to me that was like, wow. It wasn't like he was fast. It wasn't like he was breaking people off with routes.
He's not big.
He's not the biggest guy, but obviously they saw something in him, so I wanted to see how he translated. That's a good ball, first of all, by Jameis Winston right there. To throw that ball right over that dude in coverage like that, who's checking him on the seam that's under it and getting it, dropping it in the bucket. That's a dime by Jameis Winston, and we're going to see a lot of those this year. So I was
better not. I don't want to see any passes by Jameis Winston this year.
OTA-wise. Excuse me. Let me. And preseason. Because Jameis can throw that pill. So, my biggest takeaway was that guys was healthy. Guys look good. They made some plays on the ball offensively and defensively. You didn't want it to be one side totally dominating. It's a good day.
But don't you think they're saying that in every OTA in the country right now?
No.
Everybody? No.
No, I don't.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
You think they're saying, man, we look like crap?
Because it's some days that you go out there and the defense completely kicks the offense butt and vice versa.
But we don't know. We saw two clips. We don't know how.
That's all I needed. I seen a defensive play made and I seen an offensive play made. When I went out to OTAs last year, when I texted y'all and said, dude, look like the defense looked terrible. It was not one ball.
Turned out to be wrong.
No, it wasn't wrong. He got hurt. He went 4-1. So.
Oh.
Tyvus knows how to push your buttons. Tyvus is getting very good at.
No, he's not pushing buttons. He's actually saying that with legitimacy.
All I'm saying is,
listen, we can't change the goalposts. We
What do you mean? What goalposts?
We got to live in reality.
I do.
The reality is Deshaun Watson has not played well in Cleveland. That's it.
Deshaun Watson has played decent in the games that he's played in.
No, he hasn't. Across the board, you look at his numbers.
He has not met expectations.
Not even
on the whole.
What was expectation?
Better than this.
What is the?
I'm not saying he's played poorly.
What was your expectation?
There's no argument that he's played well. He hasn't played well.
4-1. He was 4-1.
Well, so was P.J. Walker.
Don't get him started on that.
You see what I'm saying? Come on now.
Man, you know better than this.
Let's talk about it.
You know he didn't play well.
You can't even keep a straight face.
The Browns traded for Deshaun to be a superstar. He's been nowhere close. That's it. There's no debate on this. I don't even understand.
TBD.
To this point, I can only judge based on what's happened so far.
I'm TBD.
All right.
Let's talk a little Guardians, guys. If you're trying to go to a Guardians game, there's no better place to buy tickets to an upcoming Guardians game than online with the Game Time app. It is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets to the Guardians even faster and easier, and prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. They have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and with their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes all the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. I was taking a look on the Game Time app earlier today. You can get upcoming Guardians tickets when they return from their West Coast road trip for under $15, and this team is red hot right now, so that's a bargain to see one of the best teams in baseball. Take all the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Once again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, just like you see on your screen, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, the Guardians are 33-17.
They keep rolling along. Season high 16 games over 500. Even on a day yesterday where McKenzie wasn't at his best and he'd been pitching really well, gives up the 3 home runs to Alonzo, McNeil, and Bader.
They were all solo shots at least.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he leaves the game down 3-0, and has been the case with the Guardians all year when they need to. Well, not like they've been down that many games, but they never. It's a never quit team, guys. They show fight again. They rally. They take the lead. I love the fact that Vogt did not use Clase.
Oh, he couldn't.
Hey,
Yeah,
you
pitched
never
3
know,
days
man.
in a
This
row.
guy-
The man had a saddle on his back by yesterday.
I was like, they cannot. I was
He pitched 4 or 5, 3 in a row, and I think 4 or 5.
because the Guardians had a chance to blow up in the game even more.
Yeah.
And I'm like, get a few more runs. So there's no thought of using Class A. And he didn't. Kate Smith got the job done, got the save. I think it's probably his first.
It was
big
his
save.
first save.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about the specifics of the game in a sec because there's
Oh,
a
yeah.
bunch of home runs hit, and I want to talk
Yeah.
about the change to progressive field. But 33 and 17, who gets the most credit for this red hot start?
All right, Tyvis, who you want to give it to? You want to give it to yourself for predicting they were going to hit a ton of home runs this year? I think you deserve some credit.
No, actually,
Yeah.
I would give, for the hot start,
Yeah.
I give the credit to the team of last year. That's who I give it to. You want to know why?
Why?
Because they were so bad at hitting and had to hear so much criticism
Yeah.
that they said, you know what, we're going to lock in for this season. And I think that they really had a really good offseason. Having Stephen Vogt come in there, having a different voice, obviously helped. Having a younger guy that they can relate to obviously helped with that. And I'm going to say that no jokes aside, I do give it to the team from last year because they were so bad that was the motivation that they needed to be successful this year because they lost, realized that we can't win like this. We were the laughing stock on the home run side. So it got them all to reset, lock in, and now they're having a good season because of it.
Jason, who do you give the most
You
credit
could go in so many different directions with this. Obviously,
Yeah.
Stephen Vogt, I think the front office deserves a ton of credit just because year after year after year after year, the way that they keep this team competitive. I'm going to pivot a little bit on this. It's hard for me to say the most, but I'm going to spotlight a guy that I think still gets not enough credit. Carl Willis. And the fact that he is the pillar of this coaching staff right now. He's the guy who they all lean on, that they all look to, because a lot of these guys are doing this for the first time. Vogt obviously is doing this for the first time. Craig Albernaz, his bench coach, doing it for the first time. And I thought, I'm going to get sidetracked for a second. I thought, Stephen, something really interesting the other day. I don't know if you guys caught this or if you talked about it. I popped in I needed to get a couple of things real quick pregame of the Mets game 2 nights, not yesterday, the day before. And I listened to Steven's pregame, and he said Albernaz is actually the one that told him to go out and challenge Bybee. That Vogt was going to take him out of the game.
Interesting.
And he said he was going to go get him. And Craig said, what do you think about going out there and challenging him? And they talked to Carl, and I think it was Carl. I think he said they ran it by Carl. And then Steven went out there, and that's when he sort of got in his face and challenged him.
Yeah.
And Bybee obviously met the challenge, struck out Carlos Santana, got out of the inning. And so that was a little interesting moment of new guys like trying something for the first time, and it worked. But what Carl's done with his pitching staff, the bullpen, the starters, what they've gotten out of Ben Lively, to be able to rejuvenate Carlos Carrasco to get this much out of him. Tristan McKenzie, we all know what he's pitching through. He's not the same Tristan that he was a couple of years ago, but he's gutting through it, and Tristan gets the credit for that, and Ben Lively gets the credit for that. Obviously, these are the guys out there with the ball in their hands. They get the credit for it. But for Carl to keep this thing together the way that he has, you know, they lost. Ruben Niebla was one of their pitching gurus, and he's in San Diego now. Matt White was another one of their pitching gurus. He's now the Yankees pitching coach, and the Yankees, by the way, are blowing the doors off everybody with their pitching. But Carl has been the one steadfast piece here that I think still continues for whatever reason, sometimes to get overlooked. And I just don't feel like he gets enough credit for that. He has done, he's an unbelievable pitching coach. The number of Cy Young winners that he's coached, even going back to Boston, is remarkable. And he's not even just with this staff, but with the coaching staff. He's almost the coach of the coaching staff at this point because so many of these guys are going through this for the first time. I think Carl Willis deserves a lot of the credit for it.
And before you go, Bold, the little snippet that Jason was referring to, Steve, take tag word full here. This is from Zach's article in The Athletic, and it was Albernaz who challenged Stephen Vogt to go get Tanner Bybee. You can read that little snippet right there. But that was quite a moment because Bybee answered the call. They called on Bybee. He came out, struck him out. It was a hell of a moment and a great call by Vogt and Albernaz to figure out a way to motivate their starting pitcher to get a critical out in the game.
It's a great call. Before I give you my guy, it's a great call because that will pay off for them when it matters.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt because
And you can't push that button all the time.
No, you can't, because then it's like, well,
Then it
what are we
loses its
doing here?
potency.
It comes off as disingenuous
Yeah.
if you do it too much. But you go out there and challenge a young pitcher who maybe has never had that in his professional career. Hey, we need you. You got it in you?
Tanner Bybee's got to be a leader of the staff.
Yeah,
we
100%.
still don't. I mean, it's almost June and Gavin Williams still hasn't thrown.
No,
a pitch.
he's a,
They are
like
relying
2 weeks away or a week away.
We've heard that for 2 months.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
You've been
you're
saying
right
that a while.
about
So, but I mean, my bold prediction was Bybee's going to catch Cy Young votes.
Yeah.
He's starting to round into form.
Right.
They need this
They
guy.
need him to
And
lead
you
the
saw
staff
in
in
that-
pitch innings.
You saw in that quote, like,
Yeah.
we want him to be a dude. He's
Right.
got to be a dude.
Absolutely.
For this team to have any chance to continue June, July, August, September, and into October, it's got to be Tanner Bybee.
And clearly this team, unlike the JB situation, clearly this team is buying into Stephen Vogt and the coaching
Yeah.
staff here. But something like this was brilliant that Stephen Vogt not only did this, but the fact that he credited his assistant coaches.
Yes.
Because he just won credibility with his assistants
Yep.
and with his players.
Yep.
And it comes from a good place. And so that's great. Now, obviously, as you said, there are so many candidates, it's really hard to pick one. But I'm going to go with a guy I just mentioned a few minutes ago, and that's Emmanuel Clase. Because until the last couple of weeks, it was the bullpen really holding this team together.
Yep.
Yes, Josh Naylor and Steven Kwan early in the season were killing it at the plate. Jose Ramirez lately has been killing it. David Fry's been real good all year. But for the most part, the lineup until recently has not been very good as a whole. And now the last few weeks they've been a lot better. And the rotation's been very inconsistent again until the last couple of weeks. The bullpen has been the rock of this team. And the leader of that bullpen is Emmanuel Clase. And he, since joining the Guardians, has made as many appearances as almost any pitcher in baseball. He was phenomenal in 2022. He was good last year, but not quite as good in 2023. And he's back to being phenomenal in 2024. And you ask any baseball player, Jason, I'm sure you've had these conversations, there is nothing more gut-wrenching than having a bad closer.
Yeah.
Because when you blow if you're a team that's consistently blowing games late, it kills the confidence of the entire roster. The fact that they have probably the best closer in baseball,
Oh, for sure.
right?
It's no debate.
Is
The guy in the Yankees is having a killer season, too.
Yeah, but
Clase's the
Clase-
best.
but Clase's done
the
it for
best.
longer. I said probably just because I'm like, am I forgetting somebody? Is there somebody off to a slow start? Clase is the best closer in baseball. You're right. There really isn't an argument at the moment. The fact that you have that, why do you think part of the reason the Guardians bullpen has been so good is because everybody else can take a breath knowing that you have Clase at the back end. And there are some guys, no matter how talented they are, Jason, as relief pitchers, that cannot be a closer. They can't pitch in that situation. They struggle in that big moment. And he makes it easier for everybody else in that bullpen to have success because they don't have to worry about their role changing because of the closer maybe losing his job. You look all over the league. Edwin Diaz 2 years ago got paid the biggest contract ever for a closer. By the way, I said at the time it was a stupid move. Then he got hurt, missed the whole season. He's been a disaster this year. The Mets have had to take him out of the closer role. You see that constantly. It is the least reliable position, maybe in sports, is the closer. You have a guy who's great. Craig Kimbrell was one of the best guys. He lost his job. He's got it back now. He could lose it again. That might ultimately cost the Orioles.
Yeah.
The difference in the end between the Yankees and Orioles might be that the Yankees closer is reliable and the Orioles closer is not. Well, it might be the same thing. The Royals closer, he's nice. He's a rookie. He's done a solid job, but he's not Clase. He's not even close. And the Royals are playing great baseball. And the Guardians haven't been able to gain any ground on them in the last week because they've won 6 in a row too. But in the end, that might be the difference, is that Clase is most reliable. And so with all these people that deserve credit, Emmanuel Clase, who has locked up, half the Guardians' wins? Roughly? Maybe a little less than half?
Yeah, probably. How many saves does he have?
How many saves does Clase have, Mike? 15, 16?
I thought
I
it was 14.
believe 15. I'll tell you right now if you give me 1 sec.
I thought it was 14, but
Okay.
maybe he added
Mike?
one. He's the best closer in baseball.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned. He's got the filthiest stuff, the nastiest stuff. I think I mentioned this once before on the show. I was talking to Stephen Vogt about him in spring training and said, "You ever face him?" And he said the first at bat was the spring training at bat.
Yeah.
Nobody knew anything about it. He was still in Texas.
Right.
Or maybe he was Cleveland. I don't remember. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. And there just wasn't a lot of scouting on Clase.
Yeah.
And Vogt came back to the dugout and said, like, the scouting report he gave
Yeah.
the guys was, moves a little. It moves.
Yeah.
And then they looked at the tracking. It was like 6 inches of break. And he's like, this
Yeah.
guy is insane.
How many wins do the Guardians have now?
33. He has 15 saves.
So
Almost
that's
half.
essentially half
Yeah.
their wins. And think about this. This is crazy, but I believe this, and I'm curious your take on this, Jason. I actually think that Clase could be even better than he is. Because you look at his strikeouts per 9 innings, it's not amazing. I mean, it's good,
Yeah.
but it's not like what Josh Hader used to be or any of those guys.
Yeah.
I even think there's another mini level of his, which is hard to say because he's the best.
Yeah.
But I actually think he could be even more dominant, which is insane.
Yeah.
What do you think his strikeouts per 9 is right now?
I think it's just under 1.99, right?
Jason, what do you think?
I would say around 8.5 to 9.2, somewhere in there.
Ty?
No idea.
It is 8.5.
Yeah, like I think he could be a 10, 11, 12.
I'm shocked it's that low.
Right, because he's so nasty. The fact that he doesn't strike out even more batters than he is tells me. I feel silly even saying that he could be even better because I don't know.
What was Rivera?
I'll tell you Mariano in a sec, but the league leader
Yeah.
this year is not a closer, Bull.
It's
Is it Glass now?
He's second.
it's Paul
11.7.
Skeens probably, right?
Well,
No, he doesn't
got here.
qualify.
Oh, he
yet.
doesn't
I said he
qualify.
only did
yeah.
Who's
2
better than
games.
Glass now?
Jack Flaherty is averaging 12.
Oh, yeah,
strikeouts
Is
per
that the
9
dude from the
innings.
Tigers?
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
He like that?
He wasn't before.
Dude, I had Tarek Skubal and Glass now on my fantasy team. And neither one got a win yesterday.
Yeah,
you believe
I know.
that?
I know. Glass never hit around.
Why were they
Real
about to
quick,
trade?
Mariano's.
Yeah.
Mariano's career strikeouts per 9 innings, 8.2.
See? Because
Oh, yeah.
and like I remember I got killed for this, but
Yeah.
because I'm such a fantasy nut, I knew Clase when they made the trade. I'm like,
Yeah.
guys, I'm not trying to tell you he's Mariano Rivera, but he throws a cutter 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Like the only other guy who could do that was Mariano Rivera, and yet his strikeout rate
Yeah,
was
that's
lower
true.
than because I know it's blasphemy, although not as much now as it was a couple years ago.
Yeah.
But Clase is a mold of Rivera just because of the cutter and the movement that he has on the cutter. And for whatever
They
reason,
don't look alike, but
maybe that's
no, it's a good point.
Maybe it's not a strikeout pitch per se, but it's
Yeah.
a pitch that you can't hit.
You just bang into the
you
ground
can't
every
barrel
time.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe that's
Yeah,
why.
I didn't even mean to say like he could be. It's just like maybe the strikeouts will go up too, but he really can't be any better because he's just been so dominant.
Yeah. He's
Like last year was his worst season of the three,
and I
he
think
still had a
last
ton of saves.
I think last year was an adjustment to the pitch clock with him. I've heard that multiple times.
That makes sense.
He was one of the pitch
Yeah.
clock victims,
Right.
Because he took a long time, and it was hard for him to
Well,
adjust.
he's adjusted now.
Now he's had a year of getting used to it. Now he's back to as dominant as he was 2 years ago.
I have to admit something.
Yeah.
When I told you that Jack Flaherty led, that was only starting pitchers. ESPN has an innings limit that you have to qualify.
Yeah.
For
There's got to be
relievers,
relievers averaging 15, 14,
Mason
15.
Miller of Oakland's averaging 18.
Yeah,
He's
that
averaging 2
guy's
strikeouts.
filthy.
per
Oh
game.
yeah, that's
He's filthy.
dude.
To get down to where Clase is,
Yeah.
and this is according to FanGraphs, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, they're
Pretty good.
well regarded. You know, we're talking in the hundreds. Like
Yeah.
the exact number
No,
is
he's not a massive strikeout pitcher. He's fine. But
he's the 106th.
This guy Miller on Oakland, even though he's young, they are going to get a huge haul. They should trade him because you know how many teams would give up a lot to get this guy.
Well, I would say I would agree with you.
Yeah.
But if closers could get a haul, I don't think Emmanuel Clase would be here right now because I think the Guardians absolutely shopped him.
They,
over the winter.
yeah, I was
here's the
about to
thing.
ask that. Why were they shopping him?
And Clase's locked up.
Here's the thing. Closers are I think the only position where the value is higher in season. Look at what happened with Andrew Miller and Matt Mariano and Aroldis Chapman in 2016.
Yeah, maybe.
Teams will pay out. And listen, there's a lot of good teams right now that don't have a good closer situation.
Well, I mean, starting pitching goes up during the season too. The value goes up. The trade value goes up.
Yeah,
during
but
the season.
if you're a team like Baltimore,
and you see Kimbrel's cracks,
exactly.
and you need, I mean,
you look at the Cubs. They're going to be interested in him.
If they could get a haul, he's had a ton of arm history. We don't need to spend a ton of time on this guy, but if he's had a lot of arm problems, if they can get a haul for him, they should do it. I just wonder if they will get the haul that we think because of what we just said. He's had a history of arm issues, and if the Guardians could have got a haul for Clase, he would be gone by now. He would not be here.
It's a good thing they didn't.
Yeah. Real quick, go ahead. You want to do a read, Mike?
No. If you want the Jimenez tag,
Just real quick, you guys may have talked about this. What the Guardians did with that Lindor trade, they knocked it out of the park. And
which you usually don't in trades like that.
With Francisco being here the last couple of days, I just wanted to mention this real quick. I don't know if you can see those numbers of comparing the side-by-sides of Jimenez's numbers and Lindor's numbers. It's incredible to me. Like, when you trade with a star player with a year of control, you don't get nothing for him.
Yeah.
And I mentioned this before. Go back and look at what the Orioles got for Manny Machado. They got nothing for Machado. The Guardians.
Look at the Nolan Arenado trade, the Goldschmidt trade.
Yes, you don't get anything.
Yeah.
Ahmad Rosario was a good player for a couple of years. He contributed to them.
Yeah.
But to get Jimenez out of this and to get him to sign the contract that Francisco would not take, basically, you just can't give Chris Antonetti and Mike Chernoff enough credit for that trade to pull out what they got out of that.
Well, their numbers are identical.
And think of this, like, I don't know if Francisco takes that contract, or if the Guardians would have said okay, and they came to a number with Francisco, Jose Ramirez is not here today.
Right. Well, it would have had to be higher than what they paid Jimenez too.
Yes. But
now,
I'm saying they would have moved on from Jose.
Right. You're right.
So by making that trade,
you got both.
You got Jimenez, who's every bit as good as Lindor right now,
and younger,
and on a much friendlier team deal than Francisco would have taken, and you have Jose. So it just worked out. I mean, you can't stress how good of a trade that was.
Nobody thought Jimenez would be this good.
No, I mean, he was a top prospect,
but not this good.
But
now the numbers are a little skewed because in 2022 he had through the roof.
Right. And
last year he did not have a great year.
And it's almost like Francisco, who had one phenomenal year offensively, never really lived up to that again. Jimenez may not either, but he is so elite defensively.
Right.
And he's good enough offensively.
I mean, it's a big win. Even though the two minor leaguers they haven't panned out.
No, just Jimenez.
It doesn't matter.
Jimenez for Lindor 1-for-1.
Yeah.
It's a home run deal.
Yeah, no doubt.
We're going to talk about something else related to the Guardians after a quick reminder. Today's show is brought to us by Yahoo Finance. Let's get straight to the point. You want to grow your portfolio? I know you do, so you can deal with the rising costs of inflation, to pay off your debts or your mortgages, pretty much anything standing in your way of financial freedom. And with Yahoo Finance, you can get access to the news, data, and tools you need to help reach that financial freedom plateau. Because when it comes to your financial future, if you think you've done it all, you haven't unless you've used Yahoo Finance. You've saved, you've researched, and now all those tools and investments can be grouped into one place with Yahoo Finance. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or a rookie just looking for some extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools you need. Plus, they're the #1 financial destination that gives you a holistic look at the news cycle, breaking news, editorial perspectives, analyst ratings, independent research, customizable charts, and so much more. For a comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor. That is yahoofinance.com. The #1 financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That is yahoofinance.com. This season, Bull.
Yeah.
It is incredible how the power numbers for the Guardians have made a big jump, and especially at home. And you triggered me onto something yesterday when you said the home road splits for the Guardians' home runs.
Yeah, they're
this
pretty
year have
stark.
been crazy. And it's not just the Guardians. Steve, take the graphic full. This season, Progressive Field has seen the 6th most home runs of any ballpark in baseball. Now, it's not exactly apples to apples. There have been more home games at Dodger Stadium and Minute Maid Park than there has been at Progressive Field, but there have been 61 home runs at Progressive Field this season. I did some digging and tried to find, and this is from Ballpark. I want to give exact credit to where it's from. This is from onlyhomers.com/ballpark tracking data, which then I confirmed with StatMuse. So I'll check 2 places. I didn't want to do all the math. It would have taken too long. Steve, take the next graphic. This is from 2024. In 2023, this didn't seem right to me, but 2 websites said the exact same thing. Only 54 homers were hit at Progressive Field last year, which doesn't seem reasonable or possible, but 2 websites said it, so that's kind of what I'm going with. What has changed at Progressive Field, and is it replacing the cargo containers in right field that has allowed...
That's by both teams, right?
Once again, I checked on StatMuse and onlyhomers.com. They both have the exact same data.
Yeah, that'd be good for both teams.
Wait a minute. You say up until this point, they had 54 home runs in Progressive?
No, this is last year.
That was last year.
Total.
Yeah.
Yes. According to...
That seems hard to believe.
Like I said, I checked 2 websites. They had the exact same for all 30 teams. So
That's 1 home run, 2 out of every 3 games.
yeah. Which seemed wrong.
For both
but
teams combined.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems great.
I mean, look at how low the Guardians' home run total last year was.
Yeah, but
Right.
still.
But they still... that
54, only 54
That can't be
home
right.
runs happened in Progressive
There's
Field
no way
last
that
year?
can be right because the Guardians hit how many home runs last year?
120.
Even if they only hit... How could fit... How could they only,
Listen, once again.
But take those out because that
So
can't
drop
be right.
that one, Steve. Go back to this year's.
There's no way that can be right.
61 is right because I went back and it was much easier to look at 24 games
Okay.
as opposed to 81. Has Progressive Field turned into a hitter's ballpark?
I think Progressive Field has always been somewhat of a hitter's park.
It's always been described to me as a true park, as fair.
So neutral weather
neutral.
effects.
And
Taking those things out, I don't...
Okay, so a couple things on that. Number one, the ball travels better in the warmer weather. It doesn't typically, the ball doesn't travel as well in April and May in Cleveland in that park. Now, we've had much better weather than we normally do both months, so I think that may play a factor. To your point, though, about the shipping containers, I actually asked that. I was talking to somebody there, and they did a study before they took them out, before they went with this. They did a study, and the study revealed that what they planned to do was going to have no impact. Now, doesn't mean the study was accurate. I'm just telling you, they did take this into effect of it would change the ball flight and carries and all that. And what I was told was that it was not going to have an impact.
Why? I wonder how you do that study. You'd have to
I don't
study
know.
it in different weather conditions.
Well, I mean, there's ways to draw models
Yeah.
and project. You can look at the wind over time.
Okay.
You know, there's math behind it, and I'm sure that they can.
That's
It's way above my pay grade.
That sounds like it's still too many variables, though.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have the accurate numbers from last year,
I know it ain't.
so I don't know how much it's changed.
It felt wrong, but like I said, 2 different sites backed it up.
But it can't be because the Guardians hit even as little the home runs as they had.
No, I agree. I'm telling you, it didn't seem right.
That's
but I
probably
was
how
able
many
to-
they hit at Progressive Field. Maybe I don't know. It can't be both teams. It's just not possible. But yeah, I don't. Even 1 year couldn't really prove that. Thank you, Jason. That the shipping containers make a difference. But just from the eye test, it does seem like the ball's been carrying better early this season. But as Jason said, it might have nothing to do with the shipping containers. It might just be we've had a warmer than normal April and May.
It's the cold, heavy air.
Right.
Hasn't been there.
That's true. Whatever it is, it's making me look like a genius.
Because the ball does carry
Yeah.
far. How many times have you heard Hammy say or Matt Underwood say in June or July that's a home run? You know,
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not in April and May. And this year we've had June and not July. We've had June weather on a lot of those days in April and May. We've had cold days. We've had a lot of warm days too.
No, we had way more warm days. It's just been more rainy. That's all.
Yeah, that 54 is the amount of home runs the Guardians hit last year at home. How many home? But the Guardians have hit. They're averaging about 1.3 home runs. How many home runs do the Guardians have this year? Do you know at home?
At home?
Yeah.
No, not specific.
I
can find
can
the
tell
split,
you.
though.
Hold on.
I can find
54.
the split.
The Guardians have hit 33 home runs at home. Okay? So here's the deal. Last year, the Guardians hit 54 home runs at home for the entire season. This year, they have 33 already, and we're not even at the one-third pole.
So that 54 was just their home runs.
54 was just the Guardians' home runs. So the Guardians hit 54 home runs at home last year. This year, they're on pace to hit over 100 at home, or about 100. No, I shouldn't say over. How many home games have they played? They've played 24 home games. So that's less than a third. Yeah. So they're on pace for over 100. They're on pace to about double their home run total at home. So whether that's the shipping containers, whether that's let me look at the how many home runs did you say they've hit
This
total
year,
at Progressive Field? Both teams?
61.
61. So their opponents have hit 22. So that's not an outrageous number.
No.
So I don't know if it's the shipping containers or if it's really just that the Guardians have had better weather and that they've hit for more power this year. In fact, they've hit in April they had 27 home runs. Oh, that's not a home road split, but anyway.
It's probably a little bit of everything.
They're hitting way. I mean, the numbers are way up. They're going to double probably, or they're on pace to double their home run total at Progressive Field from last year, which is pretty big difference. But I would say that at this point, I'm not ready to say it's the shipping containers have anything to do with it. I'll give credit to the hitters and the good weather that we've had so far this season.
Fair enough.
And Tyvus.
And Tyvus for predicting that they would hit it on home.
Always got to credit Tyvus. He's the spark plug for every sporting team in the city of
I
Cleveland.
wonder if P.J. Walker can hit a curve.
No chance.
Well, right now he's got time to find out.
By the way, there's been this stupid debate by a lot of the national shows lately about whether basketball players could play football better or football players could play basketball. Here's what I know. None of them could play baseball.
This is true.
That's a fact.
Jameis.
What's that?
Jameis Winston.
No.
He was
Kyler
an
Murray.
All-American.
Russell
baseball player at
Wilson.
Florida
You
State.
ain't pick him up in fantasy?
No, Russell Wilson couldn't play in Major League Baseball.
Kyler Murray, he could.
Maybe.
He's
Could
a
he play
top
in the
10 he's a
majors?
top
He was
10
a raw
pick.
guy.
Drew Henson.
Kyler Murray was a
barely
top
made it
10
to the
pick in the
majors.
Major League
But
Baseball
he
draft.
made it.
Yeah, but he had like 20 at bats in the majors or whatever.
He made it.
Did
Kyler Murray was
did
the eighth
Kyler
overall
Murray
pick.
make
Yes.
the right decision?
He got $250
football
million
over
guaranteed,
baseball.
Yeah, because he's a quarterback. If he played any other position, I would have played baseball.
Yes.
But
Did
quarterback.
Bo Jackson make the right decision?
Bo could have been a Hall of Famer at either sport, probably.
Did Deion make the right decision?
Deion was okay at baseball.
Yeah. He just had his speed.
Yeah.
Ricky Williams played minor league baseball.
That's right, he did.
Did he really?
Yep.
In fact, he played for the team that I did play-by-play for the year before I got there and led the team
Was
in
he
stolen base.
was he high?
He was probably high the whole time. You got to be high to live through a summer in Batavia, New York. Go ahead, Mike.
If you guys are in the chat, do us a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you haven't, Earl's going to do a 216 show this afternoon. Make sure you guys tune in for that. We may do a little special JB Fired Cavs show. Jason and I got to discuss that. We'll try to get something up if we
What
can.
time is Earl doing his show?
5 o'clock for the Ultimate 216 show.
I'm doing a podcast live. You can come on the air with me on video, 2 p.m. So join me for that too. Go ahead.
So we got news yesterday. It had been rumored, but we officially got news that the NBA is leaving TNT and going over to join ESPN and some streaming services, which means it could be the end of the greatest studio show of all time inside the NBA with Shaq, Ernie, Kenny, and Charles Barkley. So with that in mind, I asked each of you guys to create a Mount Rushmore of your all-time favorite sports personalities. And Bo will start with you, then we'll go to Jason, then we'll go to Tyvus. There was no criteria. You could run with this however you wanted, and we got 4 very different Mount Rushmores. So, Bo, let's start with you. Who's on your Mount Rushmore of sports media personalities?
So, I 3 of my 4 picks were not, like, Now you described, you said sports personalities, but you said play-by-play
Yeah,
guys.
he
It could
did
have
do
been anyone,
that.
yeah, anyone in sports media.
So I didn't pick like I find Charles Barkley entertaining, but I picked people that the people I picked were all people I grew up admiring and wanting to emulate and learning from. So 3 of the 4 are old school play-by-play guys. Now I know there's 5. We'll get to it. So Howard Cosell, when I was very young, it was like magical to watch Howard Cosell call a game. And then the second guy there, probably most people don't know him, Harry Callis. Yeah. He was the play-by-play voice for the Phillies on the radio. And even though I wasn't a Phillies fan, I would listen on the radio. When I was a kid, I didn't have cable. I'd watch the Mets and Yankees locally, even though they weren't my team, just because I loved watching baseball. But I would try to listen to games on the radio so I could hear the Cubs sometimes. And I first came across Harry Callis because the Cubs were playing the Phillies, and I remember putting the radio on. I was like, well, I could probably get the Phillies game. And I heard Harry Callis, and I was like, I want to be Harry Callis. Because he was magical listening to him on the radio. He was also one of the voice of like NFL films, and he did a lot of that stuff, and he did football. In the same vein, Vin Scully, like as a kid, now he did radio way back in the day, but he was with the Dodgers from the Brooklyn days. But Vin Scully calling a baseball game was just magic. I mean, if you're my age or close to it or older and you loved baseball, there's a lot of great moments in the history of baseball on TV where Vin Scully, who was the Dodgers play-by-play guy but would do the national stuff in the World Series, like it was magical listening to him call games.
Joe Garagiola and Vin.
Right. It was just, I mean, that was just the pinnacle. And then, despite the fact that they receive a lot of criticism, and I'm kind of done with Mad Dog these days because I find his shtick a little tiring at this point. But Mike and the Mad Dog, and I know probably a lot of people in Cleveland are like, who cares about them? Or maybe you don't even know who they are. I guess at this point you probably do. But Mike and the Mad Dog were really the first sports talk radio show that made a massive impact. Mm-hmm. And I know you had Pete Franklin here in Cleveland, who was from New York originally, and there were little bits and pieces around the country. But the Fan in New York was the first all-sports radio station in America. It started in 1987. And Mike and the Mad Dog were not on initial. Well, Mike was, but not. And Mike and the Mad Dog started, I want to say, in either 88 or 89. And they burst on the scene, and every young person that wanted to do that, like before them, I never thought like, oh, I could be a sports talk show host. I was a kid. I wanted to do play-by-play because there was no sports talk shows, and there wasn't like a sports talk station. And then I listened to Mike and the Mad Dog as a teenager into my early 20s, and I'm like, I want to do this. This is what I want to do. And they influenced and inspired every young broadcaster in the entire Northeast and beyond. I remember like talking to Ken when Ken first started at when Ken Carmen first started at the Fan, and Ken now is a veteran savvy broadcaster, but he was not when he started at the Fan in 2011. He was a young 25-year-old who had worked in small markets.
Ken Neto.
And Ken, Ken knew who Mike and the Mad Dog were when the average fan in Cleveland and other places might not have. But people that wanted to get into this business, they were the standard bearer. Yeah. And I still have a relationship a little bit with Mike because Mike and I both do our podcast for Bet Rivers, and the producer for Mike's podcast is also the producer for mine. And say what you want about both of them have received a lot of criticism over the years. But it takes a lot to be successful in this business, make the kind of money they did, have the success they did for as long as they have. And credit is due. So I've rambled a long time, but that's my Mount Rushmore, kind of +1. I counted Mike and the Mad Dog as one.
That's still unfair that you got 5.
I know, it's a little cheating, but there you go.
Jason, you're up next. Who's on your list?
We got a little bit of overlap.
Oh, boy.
With Howard Cosell.
Yeah. Okay.
And with Vin Scully. Vin was just the best of the best to ever do it. John Madden just reinvented the way that football was done on TV. He's the pioneer of that, obviously with the telestrator and with the thought. And I had Hal Leibovitz, and they took a picture of Les Levine. So we'll call.
What
it
happened?
Wait, what happened?
I texted Mike Hal Leibovitz, and he put a picture of Les Levine.
Oh, well.
But I mean, Les as well. Les
And
is.
explain yourself.
I typed in the name you gave me. That was what Google Images gave me. I did not fact check that.
That is not.
I was like, oh, man, Les.
That is not. But I mean, now I will. Les Levine obviously was a giant in Cleveland sports for so long.
Yeah.
Dearly missed. Really enjoyed going on his show, getting to know him a little bit. But
And he's definitely on the Mount Rushmore of Cleveland.
Oh,
broadcasters.
100%.
He's the number one guy. And Les Levine was so nice to me when I moved to Cleveland. And anytime I had a question about any like old school thing, Cleveland wise, I was like, Les,
yeah.
what's the deal here?
Yeah,
what really happened?
He was great. Now, on my original list, though, coming from a writer's background, I had Hal Leibovitz, who was a giant in Cleveland and across the country. He had a weekly column, Ask Hal, the referee, that ran in the Sporting News. Bob Costas consulted Hal on during a broadcast that Bob was doing, I think, of baseball. He had a question, and they reached out to Hal during the broadcast to get clarification on the rules. He was a sports editor of the Plain Dealer in the 60s, and basically you have the Cleveland Guardians here today still because Hal stopped them from moving. Hal caught wind that they were trying to move the team out of town in the 60s and ran mugshots of all the guys involved across the front page and said,
I did not know that.
Yeah, he was a titan of the industry.
That's awesome.
He's in the Baseball Hall of Fame. The press room in the Jacobs or Progressive Field is named after him, and he was the first to do a weekly Sunday Notes column, and it was must read. When he retired as sports editor of the Plain Dealer, he became the columnist for the Lake County News Herald and the Lorraine Morning Journal. I grew up on the West Side reading the Lorraine Morning Journal. I delivered it as a kid. I worked there for the first 10 years of my career, and when you were a kid, Hal was the first thing you did on Sunday was rip open the sports section and go to Hal's Sunday Notes. He had just these little intricate details of all sports in Cleveland, but he was just phenomenal. He wrote one column that don't ever cut a kid, especially like if you're in football, don't cut the kid. And a little known fact, I think actually Les revealed this after Hal died, that he wrote it based on his son. His son had been cut from a football game. You can Google it and find it. Just incredibly well done. Hal is a giant in the sports writing industry and will always be one of my absolute treasured favorites.
That's awesome.
And Les as well.
Yeah. And I don't know Hal, but I'm assuming based on his name he's Jewish.
Yes, he was Jewish.
So maybe Anthony said, one Jew or the other, it doesn't matter.
He was so respected that they
I'm kidding. Anthony would never do that.
They had his funeral was private, but they had a public service for him.
And I'm allowed to say that because I'm Jewish. Let's clarify. Sorry.
I can't tell you and Mike apart.
They had a public service for him, and Mark Shapiro came to to the service for Hal because I went. It was in Beechwood, and Mark Shapiro was there. I'm sure there was others, but I just remember seeing Mark in the back of the room. Yeah,
it's Shapiro, Mark. Come on.
Ty went with a very different list. Tyvis,
Yeah.
who's on your Mount Rushmore?
I went with my Mount Rushmore is guys that are like me. When I watch them, I can see myself in them.
Okay.
So when you see this list,
because you're in the media too.
No.
Yes, you are.
No, because they're former athletes. Let's see the list. My list right there. Obviously, I had to go with Kirk Herbstreit. Kirk just does a great job of breaking down, and his memory of things is unbelievable at times. Just some of the things that he knows, just the tidbits. He can tell you about the kid's background, and it's like all of these players. And it's crazy that he does college, and now that he's doing NFL, he's still doing it. His memory is just wild, and it's something that my memory is good, but not quite as good as him. Next, Gus Johnson is just a bunch of energy. Like when I watch Gus, he always has some remark that he says that sticks, and it's his enthusiasm. It's like he's upbeat. He's very into it, and he gets you into it. And then Shaq and Chuck is literally hilarious, but they teach you a lot about the game, and they always, I feel smarter when I listen to them talk and I learn things from them, but I always get a laugh out of them because they close to they're in touch with like young societies. Like they be paused and doing the stuff like that when people say some out of pocket stuff. They give them that look and it's a joke. So I always enjoy those two when they're doing TNT, and it's sadly that they're going away. So yeah, there you go.
I was expecting Emmanuel Acho to be on that list.
No, you know what's funny is that you know what's funny is that. So I did this list at 1 o'clock in the morning because I had went to sleep and then I woke up and then I had one of your episodes, so I couldn't go back to sleep. I didn't have to pee, but I just couldn't go back to sleep. And I remember at 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, I never got the rundown. So I looked at my text messages at 1 in the morning, and I'm like, oh, shoot. He said send a list. And I thought, I should put Tyvis Powell on that list. But then I thought to myself, I'm not a media personality, so
yes, you are.
Therefore, I would not meet the qualifications.
I was actually shockingly the last one to send it in.
You would.
I never looked at the rundown last night.
I was first. Look at that.
I know, Jason,
that is
you were
first. Go ahead, Mike.
We got a bunch of super chats we got to get to before we wrap up today's show. Big numbers today. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. Evan409 gifted 5 memberships. So shout out to Evan for gifting memberships. Cody Clark said there's 1,900 people in here. Take the time, hit the like button. Thank you, Cody, for the message. Charles T has 2 super chats. He says, Bull brought up Becky Hammon. Do you feel this fan base and media has shown the patience for a first-time coach's growing pains, especially a first-time female head coach?
I mean, I don't think the female has anything to do with it. To me, it's irrelevant. I don't know.
I'd have no problem ripping her.
I would treat her just like I treat any other coach, good and bad.
Yeah. Praise them when they do well, rip them when they don't.
She's got a ton. I mean, she's got a ton of experience, not in the NBA as a head coach, but she's been an assistant in the NBA. She's been a head coach, a successful head coach in the WNBA. I know it's a different league, but I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen. I hope she gets an opportunity at some point because she's earned it with somebody, and I'll be rooting for her.
Charles T. also says, after there was little patience for a coach that improved every season, what's the expectation in year 1 for a new coach? A first-round playoff appearance, second round? But his first year, what's the expectation?
You better not go backwards.
No.
You better at least make the semis. I don't care about the regular season. You better at least make the conference semis.
Right.
If not the conference finals. Like, that's the next step is conference finals.
The goal's got to be for this team to win a championship.
Yep.
I mean, that's it. Anything else is not good enough.
Well, if they got to make these moves, I got to see everything. I got to see the coaching staff, and I got to see the moves that they make. Yeah. And then I'll tell you if I think they there. But as constituted, see, that's the thing. As constituted, as much as we complain, they still have success. And who's to say if they didn't get one more piece? Because you know how you say, like, you'd be so close. Like, one little piece could just take you over the top. And I feel like that's where they thought they were. Like, all we need is just one shooter, one little knockdown, consistent shooter. If this team had one knockdown, consistent wing, do you think that they could potentially be a championship team, Jason?
They need a playmaking wing.
Now, hold on.
Size.
Let me. Darius goes.
We got a bunch of super chats.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Batmain says, and I'm not sure who he's talking to or what he's referencing. You guys were dead wrong. Now apologize. He also says, should I call off work, chat? The answer is always yes. Call off work.
He's talking about how y'all would disagree that P.J. Walker was that guy.
I'm sure that's what he was talking about.
The almighty Scorpio says, got to go with Matt Vazirgerian Santa Maria.
Yeah, Matt Vasgersian. Yeah.
Got to go with Matt Vasgersian for what?
The Mount Rushmore.
Mount
with
Rushmore.
That Santa Maria call he has. That
Matt
home run
McGee.
Call.
Matt Vasgersian, I don't think he's good at all. I don't know his Santa Maria call. Whenever he does a national broadcast, I don't want to watch it. Mount Rushmore, Matt Vasgersian?
I'm unfamiliar with him, I'm going to be honest.
I mean, listen, he's a talented broadcaster, but
what does he call?
I'd put 500 guys before I put him.
Baseball.
Well,
Mike, we obviously know you didn't know him because you butchered his name.
Mikey McGee says, my Mount Rushmore and sports personalities are Pat McAfee, Jim Ross, Jerry the King Lawler, and Jay Crawford.
I mean, there's 2 wrestling guys on there.
Batman says, Ty, you hit on the J Balvin threes. Are you getting the Olympic sixes?
I did not get the J Balvin threes. And the Olympic six, I don't really wear blue, so I don't really want the Olympic sixes.
Who's J Balvin?
J Balvin is this. He's a rap singer, rap song.
You're asking me?
He's a musician, and he made these threes. Jordan threes.
Okay.
And
Batman.
they just dropped the black. They like black. They like the sun's color. They all black with orange and purple.
Go ahead,
Two
Mike.
more. Batman says, R.I.P. Mr. Write Down Euclid Fred McLeod. And Charles T said, Bull, top 3 food spots in Cleveland. Go.
I'll answer on overtime. I got to think about it for a second. I'll
Charles,
answer
if you're
that
not
question.
a member, we'll make sure we tweet out the answer. We'll make sure we get that out to you.
I'll
if you're not a
answer
member
that
overtime.
in a second. And it's tough to pick top 3 off the top of my head.
I'll give you 3 real quick.
And go ahead.
Good Company, Hex, and give me one more, Bull. Just so we get through.
Sweet Pork Wilson's.
Sweet Pork Wilson's. There you go. There you go. All right, we're going to see you in overtime. We'll have 2 extra streams today at some point. The Ultimate 216 show. We'll talk a little more JB Bickerstaff, and we'll be back tomorrow after overtime.